across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello everybody, Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the great Ian Collins here on the home of common sense, that is Talk. I'm delighted to be taking you through the next 3 hours and what a show we have lined up for you. But of course, we can't do this show unless you, the great British people, are tuning in and more importantly, messaging, texting and calling in. So to do that, 0344 499 1000. That's how you can call us, and you can WhatsApp us on that number too. 87222 is how you can text us with the word talk at the start of your message, and follow our messages on X at talkTV. But of course, I love a voice note too, and we love to get a load of voice notes ready to go. So again, 0344 499 1000. That's for your calls, your WhatsApps, and your voice notes. Let's get lots of those in, because let me take you through what we're going to be discussing in this first hour. Rachel Reeves faces hypocrisy after renting out her £3,200 a month Dulwich home without the required Southwark licence, despite hiking buy-to-let stamp duty. She only applied yesterday after Number 10 waived off further scrutiny, yet failure to licence is a criminal offence with unlimited fines and rent repayment. Kevin Badenoch is demanding a full investigation. Rare breakout of consensus. Conservatives and Reform UK MPs united behind Nigel Farage's bill to quit the ECHR, signalling a new right of centre alliance. The motion did, however, lose by 96 votes to 154 after Labour switched to vote against under pro-EU pressure, with Lib Dems claiming the credit. Symbolic or not, big-name Conservatives back Farage as Kevin Badenoch led the I lobby, drawing a clear dividing line with Labour. But in news the Labour government is desperate to let us know about 60,000 blades are now off the streets, ninja swords surrendered ahead of August bans, and knife robberies and homicides are falling. With tougher age checks and online sale rules coming, let's hope for less weapon carrying, fewer attacks and safer communities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before I get to our great guest, he is a friend of ours here. His name is Mr. Peter Barnes, great political commentator. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hi, Jonathan. How's it going?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. But before we go to Peter, he and I have been having a good old rant.
I think we've fixed everything.
We fixed everything.
We've nothing to talk about.
We've got nothing to talk about. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into that first story. Rachel Reeves, or Rachel Thieves, or Rachel from Accounts, however it is you want to call her, the Chancellor has managed to embroil herself in scandal after not getting a licence, which she's required in where her home in Dulwich under the rules of Southwark Council means that you have to have a licence. She's been doing this for about 16 months now, claiming £3,200 a month in rent, all of which she's publicly declared on her register of interests. The problem for Labour is this is the same Chancellor who's been busy tweeting away that she wants to see licensing for rental accommodation expanded across her constituency up in Leeds. In fact, only 10 days ago was she busy tweeting that she wants to see it rolled out and campaigning for that to happen alongside her fellow Labour colleagues. The hypocrisy in this case, therefore, is rancid. But it's not the first Labour scandal. We've had a homelessness minister who kicked out her tenants in order to be able to hike up taxes. The anti-corruption minister having to resign. Why? Because she's being investigated for corruption. We have a Prime Minister who's been embroiled in scandal, with Lord Ali paying for his wife's dresses, his suits and his glasses, as well as whilst they were being able to benefit from a Number 10 pass in the early days of this Labour government, and having a former now Labour MP even swinging punches at constituents on a boozy night out, leading to Reform UK gaining in the first parliamentary by-election we had of this Parliament. It is nothing other than a shambles. And when you add on top the fact that Angela Rayner, the former now Deputy Prime Minister, having to resign in disgrace after not paying the correct amount of stamp duty owed, what is it with Labour and housing and property that is quite so messy? Well, you know what it is to do if you want to tell us your views. Is Rachel Reeves so bad that she needs to go? Has her hypocrisy infuriated you so much that she should do the honourable thing and resign? And our question for today, which actually Peter very kindly supplied to us, is: can rule breakers be rule makers? Well, you know what to do. 0344 499 1000 is how you call us, WhatsApp and voice note us. 87222 is how you text us, with the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Peter,
yes.
Rachel Reeves, what do you make of this? Are we all getting overexcited? Are we blowing this out of proportion? Should she really have to resign over something so minor?
Well, over this, no. Over literally everything else this woman has done, she should have got a long time ago. I mean, the woman lied more times than I can count, and she still has a job. I mean, to be honest, I think the only reason she's there is because the city is terrified of what comes next. That's the only reason that she's survived this long. But what I find interesting really about this one is it shows that we are so over-regulated that even the people making the regulations don't even know what they're regulating anymore. This is the absurdity to which we've got to. And it's one of the reasons we've got no growth is because we strangle the property sector, we strangle construction because of these kind of licenses. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, the important buildings and the, you know, the feel of the area is very, very important. But, you know, at some point, we have to either knock things down or build something. And these kind of regulations are the things that get in the way of progress and growth and development and fixing everything. Our economy is so linked to housing and property that without it, the way that we've got it now, it's why nothing is working and everything's falling apart. But my interesting thing is, on that list of everything that you mentioned, I can't help but notice administrative error is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, isn't it? My God. But then you've got to throw in the 262 improper releases. You've got the Bob Villan collapse case. You've got the China collapse case, all blamed on administrative error. You got all the way back to, I think, when this really started, was when Keir Starmer forgot, by the way, he had a £200,000 field of land.
Yes. Donkey field.
Who forgets that? Who forgets they have a 200, I think it was nearly 200k worth of land? He says, oops, forgot to declare that. And his excuse of this office, we were busy. That tells you everything. And I said right there, I said, he's got to nip that in the bud, because if he gets the big job, you think he's busy now? My God. Well, it's exhausting. People always say I'm a very angry man. I'm not, I'm tired. I'm tired of sitting in this room going, that's terrible, that's awful. And it's literally because there is no accountability. Nobody has any clue how to actually fix something. And the lack of political courage to actually fix things just doesn't exist.
Well, Peter, if I quickly go to a clip of Rachel Reeves, let's see what Rachel had to say not long ago when it came to holding someone to account for their actions.
Whole growing feeling that there's one rule for those at the top and another for everybody else that we need to root out of our politics.
Indeed, Rachel, there is a feeling of there's one rule for
there's always a club.
The rule breakers and one rule for everyone else. I mean, Rachel, the problem you've got here, my love, is on the 20th of October 2025, you tweeted out, I welcome Leeds City Council's decision to expand their selective landlord licensing policy to include the Armley area. While many private landlords operate in the right way, we know that lots of private tenants in Armley face problems with poorly maintained housing. This scheme means private landlords in the area will be required by law to obtain a licence for any residential property they are seeking to let and must meet certain standards to ensure their property is safe and in a decent state of repair. I mean, this is Rachel Reeves from her account for her constituency 10 days ago. For those watching online, they'll be able to see now that tweet being shared on the screen.
That will be on the side of every reform campaign leaflet ever in her constituency, because what it shows is she has no eye for detail, which I think we all know, but also she's a terrible person at hiring, because as you know, Jonathan, there's people in her office who will deal with this stuff, you know, and they must be appalling at their job. I mean, there's terrible, and then there's the level they're at. And I tell you now, it's terrifying, really. But, you know, I look at the economy, I look at her track record as Chancellor, and I'm like, how are you still employed? But then I remember it's Britain, it's 2025, and nobody gets fired anymore. You know, I honestly think the only way you get fired
the Workers' Rights Bill will make sure that is cemented even further.
I think if you use the wrong pronoun, I think that's the only way you get fired in the UK, particularly in the public sector, because it's absurd now.
I mean, it's just getting embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. It is exhausting. And you're right, actually, Peter. I think what you say is how when I speak to people back in Stoke-on-Trent, they're just tired of it all. Labour came in with a big promise of change. Keir Starmer made such a big thing about being whiter than white, the most virtuous individual.
None of this will happen on my watch. And that was the line he made.
And straight out the gate, Lord Ali giving 14 grand birthday parties for Bridget Phillipson with people that she admitted she didn't even know who they were, paying tens of thousands of pounds in suits and glasses and dresses for Keir Starmer and his wife. Rachel Reeves getting concert tickets free of charge too. Angela Rayner getting trips to New York and penthouse apartments. I think also Lord Ali's one, if I'm not mistaken, there as well. Lord Ali, blimey, I must make friends with him at some stage.
I remember saying at one point, this isn't the people's government, it's Lord Ali's government at one point. Because I also felt like I was the only person in Westminster not invited to a party. I mean, it felt very lonely, I have to admit. But what it does actually, all of these incidences, the excuse is always given, well, we didn't break the law. That is the problem the Labour Party have at the moment, this mentality of, well, we didn't technically do anything wrong. You've got the worst thing for them right now that you could ever have it from a PR or politics standpoint, a pattern of behaviour. When you have a pattern of behaviour...
It's what did the Tories, isn't it?
It's what did the Tories. It's what brings down every government. It is a series of incidents where you keep using the same excuse because you haven't learned. And it shows that you've not really taken the criticism that the public is throwing at you seriously.
I always remind people with Boris Johnson, for example, what brought him down was not Partygate. In fact, he had actually got past that. The report was not this damning indictment of him.
I remember
it was Chris Pincher, and when he said, I never knew of Chris's behaviour, and then the former permanent secretary of the Foreign Office that oversaw Boris said, here's a letter that I wrote to you warning you of Chris's behaviour, and that was when everyone went, we've been going through months of this, we're tired, we're exhausted, and Tory MPs, rightly or wrongly, and people would, I still think the Tories would be in a better position had Boris still led them into the last election, but they still would have been out of office. But the truth of the matter is that, like you say, the public then started to see a pattern of behaviour where there's constantly some other thing, and then it never ending. By-elections galore, from scandals, investigations. I used to dread waking up on a Sunday thinking what this paper was going to reveal about yet another colleague.
I can only imagine, but I wake up now and I'm like, what inquiry are we having today? Because this is the reality. He couldn't launch an inquiry into this, because I think we're up to somewhere at least 30 by now. We must be. I mean, everything is... David Lammy the other day in front of Robert Jenrick was just like, well, did you launch an independent inquiry? I was like, really, that's the line you're going with? Not, we let out the one migrant, you know, who actually asked to be deported. My God, I'm sure we'll get to that one, but it's just absurd to me that, yet again, it just shows that they are so out of touch. But the problem with the Labour Party, they've had this for quite some time, they just think they're better people. So
Peter, you've nailed it. This is the problem with Labour. My only ever issue with Labour has been they genuinely believe they're so virtuous, they're so high and mighty, they're such the good people that everyone else who doesn't agree with them or doesn't understand them, therefore must be some sort of like white nationalist, supremacist, racist that lives in these areas that doesn't understand the real challenges of working people. Yet, I bet most of that Labour Party that I see, I don't look at many of them and hear many of them and think, God, you look like you had it tough in your upbringing. I mean, Bridget Phillipson trying to say about how working class she is, I think her mum and dad were both teachers, a very middle class profession.
A very middle class profession. I really hate this kind of, I've got to show you how much of a working person I am. I don't really care where you came from. I care what you do. And we have to get... I really hate how the right is shifting into this kind of inverse identity politics kind of thing where, you know, we're doing exactly what they did, and that has to stop.
Well, Peter, what I'll say is we have got a fun video, because you'll remember we had Angela Rayner, which was quite ironic, where she obviously had that horrific video of her rapping. Well, AI's very quickly managed to do their own Rachel Reeves version. So for the listeners, here is Rachel Reeves, maybe #1 Christmas hit, coming to you soon.
Moved in Downing Street, pack my things, rented out my gaff, now the trouble begins. Didn't get a license, Southwark rules, now they're calling me the landlord fool. 3 grand rent, month by month, didn't read the form, oops, that's blunt. I told Keir it's a silly mistake, he said, Ratch, for God's sake. License, never heard of her.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we all know. I'm laughing about this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm also terrified because this could very easily happen to me if I ever want to return to frontline politics.
Since I started doing this, the fear of being a meme has never been higher. But not like a good meme. Like, being a terrible meme is my biggest fear, realistically. But what's quite interesting is the effectiveness of those kind of videos now in our politics, and the way that we campaign and the way that we talk about politics. That thing is 10 times more effective than any report or any inquiry will ever have. And for right or wrong, that's how it is. But, you know, the seriousness of the fact that this woman is in a couple of weeks going to decimate the economy even further than she already has. Start buying tinned goods. I know I have.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, tell us what you're thinking about Rachel Reeves. Should she go? Yes or no? 0344 499 1000 is how you can call us, how you WhatsApp us and voice note us. 87222 is how you text us with a talk and start your message. And, of course, you can also message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, Pete and I will be discussing migration. What is Labour going to do? Will they finally fix the problem? And a rare breakout of unity between Conservatives and Reform. Is this potentially the coalition of the future? We'll see you soon.
not a stupid person, despite what some people might think. She's a very intelligent person and would be seen desperately trying to do the right thing by the law. Of course she should. And this, I think, is a mistake, of course. But I think that it's embarrassing and difficult because it's the sort of thing when you're dealing with taxes and licensing and registration that has legs.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing that investigative journalists perfectly legitimately can and will continue to look through. What are the unintended consequences?
Yeah, and especially after Angela Rayner not paying her full stamp duty.
What they're not probably planning to do is reduce benefits in any shape or form. And they seem to think that you can go on taxing ordinary, hard-working people as well as the so-called rich. On and on and on, tax, 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 tax. And that doesn't have an effect on the whole economy, a negative effect, if you're just spending on welfare and other non-growth related areas. This is absolutely a doom spiral.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everybody. Jonathan Gullis in for the great Ian Collins here on the home of Common Sense, that is Talk. And still in the studio with me is our friend of ours, political commentator Peter Barnes, and we're going on to migration because how can we avoid it? You know him, I think the whole world now knows him, Hadush Kabatu, 41, Ethiopian national, who arrived via small boat in June 2025. He sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl and another woman in Epping in Essex in July 2025. Convicted on the 4th of September, later jailed, and then later the doors kindly opened for him and allowed to roam around freely for 40 hours before being found in a park by a member of the public, rearrested. Labour then boasting they deported him, and then we find out 6 hours after he's deported, we gave him £500 of British taxpayers' money, which I've just been told by my great producer Finn is the equivalent of 14 months on the average salary of someone in Ethiopia. So he is obviously riding high on his time landing back. And by the way, you, the British taxpayer, also paid for 5 people to board the flight with him to make sure he got there too. So that £500 is not the true cost of that particular flight. But guess what? He then decided to do himself an exclusive interview with Sky. Let's hear what he has to say.
On the morning, Saturday, I get a police. Look here. Please, I am wanted man. I arrested. I will give you my hand. Please help him. Where is police station? He ignored me. He drive. I am not unknown. The police station, where is the place? I am not Google it, but also I get the police. I will give you my hand. Please help me. Where is the police station? Take me. I am wanted. You know me, my image. My name is Hadish Kwatu. I am national of Ethiopia. Please, I want the mistake release from transport prison. Please help me. Who can responsible for me? Where is home office? Where is the immigrant? I will tell them, but also all of the experts are ignored me.
Well, there's a video clip of paedophile and sexual predator, which I found it quite weird for Sky News to platform, but he did obviously reveal that, and he is alleging that he did try and hand himself in earlier than being captured. The Met Police have said there is absolutely no evidence to substantiate those claims. But Peter, this just continues to be an embarrassment of all embarrassments.
I mean, I remember hearing that particular interview and I thought, it doesn't matter whether there's no evidence of it, it just sounds like it's true. And that's part of the problem now, is that farce has become reality and we don't know, up, down is up. That's the reality with all of this stuff now, because he says, where's the Home Office? That's also my question. Although, to be fair, the further they are away from a problem, the more likely you are to solve it. But, yeah, it's just ridiculous to me. Again, I sit here pretty much every other day now going, this has to stop. But I don't think it will. I genuinely don't think this is ever going to stop.
You're not confident David Lammy, he's got this review now going in, he's going to fix things?
Let's not insult my intelligence. I mean, there's stupidity and then there's David Lammy. You can have
Mastermind.
Don't. I actually, when I'm having a bad day, I watch that particular clip to make me happy. But it's just hilarious that this is the state that we're in. But again, there is no way the government should ever have promised that they were going to deport him. They don't have that power. They could get that power if they wanted to. By all means, they've got a whopping majority in Parliament to control. But the idea that there's no political courage, there's no political forethought, and they keep blaming the comms. We were talking about this before, but the comms game is non-existent. It's their actual decision-making is just non-existent. And the ones they do make are to cover up the mistake that they either... the ones that's just happened are one that they've made about 3 weeks ago.
There's a great thing where people are saying we're sick of seeing Keir Starmer and David Lammy tweeting, for example, they're angry, they're livid, they're insulting, this has happened. Everyone's like, but you're the guys in charge.
Yes, and what really annoys me is this whole, well, we inherited this. You've been in power for over a year now, that doesn't really work. But also, you had 14 years to sit in opposition and get the policies right, to come at things and just hit the ground running. The idea that they didn't know about any of these problems is a categorical lie. As you'll know, shadow ministers get a briefing from the civil service around general election time about the true state of everything.
And plus their own roundtables they'll be conducting with businesses,
so the
with
idea that they don't know before they got into office is a categorical lie, though this Starmer's government, so lying is what they do. It is just absurd to me, and I actually find it quite disturbing how easy they lie.
Yeah,
I find that very but I said this the other week, it's gaslighting as well, because they're telling you that what you're seeing isn't what you're seeing. That it has to be stamped out immediately. You're not being
won over by the clearly AI-generated tweets that Keir Starmer's X account keeps putting out.
I don't know if they are AI-generated or that's what he actually believes. This is, again, we're so far down the rabbit hole and through the looking glass now that I can't tell what's up and what's down. I mean, I've spent 10 years in Westminster now. I genuinely don't know what's going on, and it's my job to, and I find that's quite concerning.
Yeah, trying to tell some of your clients what's going on, and just a shrug now, it seems to be the most common thing.
My favourite was when somebody asked me, I think it was over all the Brexit year stuff, and they said, oh, this had happened, and I went, what happens now? I went, I honestly have no idea.
Well, another crazy story, obviously. Labour loves this one-in, one-out scheme with France. This scheme, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that has seen 42 people removed, 23 people accepted, and we know one person making the return journey after being deported, who is shock horror, still, as reported in The Sun, in this country, despite being told we've got his biometrics, we can get him back straight away. Now, Labour keeps saying it's a pilot, and it is indeed a pilot till June 2026, so I'll expect we maybe hit the 50 mark by Christmas, and we'll suppose it. But in that same time, thousands have actually come over already illegally. Labour's now obviously saying, well, we're going to use these 2 disused military bases, which we think will hold a maximum of about 2,000 out of the 35,000 currently sat in hotels. I mean, the one in, one out scheme is just... do you think it'll ever be scaled up to actually be a deterrent?
No, not at all. I call it the hokey-cokey migrant problem because it's one in, one out, one in, one out. But the reality is you can't use the barracks because Labour MPs now actually campaigned to have that shut down.
Keir Starmer thought it was very inhumane.
Yes. I mean, they're either just... they're that desperate for any kind of fix without doing the thing they need to do, which is dismantling the legal framework, the kind of rearrangements over the ECHR, the Refugee Convention, which is the actual one we need to go after, not the ECHR. Anybody who keeps saying ECHR, they're wrong. It's the Refugee Convention you need to change. But the Labour Party, when it came to the deal with the French, the Macron government knew that Starmer was in that much political trouble. He could get whatever he wanted out of them. The problem of the scheme is the imbalance between what we get and what the French get to deny and all the rest of it. It is absolutely abhorrent. Whoever agreed to that tells you the desperation of this government.
Well, what's interesting, Peter, is that people in France are saying because the French authorities won't house them once they've been returned to France and basically are barred from claiming asylum, they're basically going, well, I've got nothing to lose, I might as well just try and come back to the UK again. So unless the French are willing to accept to permanently keep the ones that we're sending back to them, like we're doing with the ones coming from France into the UK, those people are going to be sat in migrant camps in northern France and then just go to someone, look, I'll work in the black market once I land in the UK, just put me on a boat again. I
was talking to somebody who works at the Justice Department, and they were saying that basically the smuggling gangs are doing buy one trip, get another half price. Wow. So they're legitimately doing it because they just don't believe that there's any kind of deterrent or enforcement to it. But when it comes to the migrants actually themselves, I was like, well, I don't blame them for trying to come back. We roll out the red carpet. We give them literally everything. The French, they do the basics, which is what every other country does. We're the oddity by just keep handing out and handing out and handing out. The reality is this government is not capable. It is not willing to do what is necessary to protect our borders and keep people safe. Because we now have the evidence that the migrant crisis is directly linked to the increase in crime. And it's undeniable now. And the government, for as long as it sticks its head in the sand, is putting people at risk. And that means, in my opinion, they all have to go.
And as you say, whilst that's going on, it is allowing immigration to remain the top one or number 1 or number 2 issue with British voters, which means anything you're trying to do on the cost of living is overshadowed because they're seeing the billions being spent. And is simply a gift in the lap of Nigel Farage and guaranteeing, slowly but surely, if this continues for the years to come, he will be at the next general election the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
He must be thinking it can't be this easy. Because it's just an open goal. It is an open goal for him. There is a clear path to number 10 for Nigel Farage. And he doesn't really have to do anything. All he has to do is just say that.
I think Dominic Cummings was correct when he said he could just simply sit and use his phone, put out some social media clips, a bit like Trump in 2016. And at the moment, he would be able to win the election just like that, without even having to have all the donors and all the policy. But I say reform because I know, Peter, you reform get on like a house on fire.
Yeah, best friends.
Lee Anderson, Reform's chief whip, who's also acting as their welfare policy spokesperson, has put out an idea. I'm assuming it's off the cuff, but Geraint Towler's in later, so we'll ask him for definite whether it is. But he said that instead of the Motability scheme, we should return to the 1960s three-wheeled free cars for disabled people, the very cars that were taken off the roads due to the severe safety issues with them. I mean, look, I know Lee, and I can imagine this was just a sort of off-the-cuff bit of a laugh, but is this where you think the problem for reform will lie, is that this has now become the headline of that press conference, and it will, to those swing voters, where they will need to get to 35-40%, will just start to go, you guys aren't very serious.
Yeah, and it has been, and I've been warning about it before Nigel even joined Reform. I was saying this will be the problem. It is message discipline and also expectation management. For those of us who run campaigns, that's the big one, because you can't promise everything, get into office and not be able to deliver on anything. We've had that. It's called the Starmer government. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. Change, change, change. Sounds wonderful. Actually, they've no idea what they're doing. My big problem has always been that that because there is no solid policy base, these off-the-cuff remarks, again, they attract so much attention because nobody's actually running the show in terms of like a school matron kind of, you go here, say that, you go that. Message discipline is so just out of control, and it's infuriating to watch because of this straight path to power that they've got. You know, don't get me wrong, I actually agree with a lot of what Reform want to do. It's just the people and the competency isn't there for me to ever really get behind them.
It's interesting, there's a lot of people on the centre-right. Look, I'm much more sympathetic than yourself, Peter, with Reform UK.
I think everybody is.
But I will say, like you say, I think the frustration is there is actually an opportunity for a party on the centre-right to defeat this Labour government and stop what I think could even be even worse, which is a Labour, Lib Dem and God forbid even Green coalition.
Yes. Yeah.
And if we're going to have the Conservatives still languishing without understanding the electoral reality served to them, and if Reform's going to allow these off-the-cuff remarks, maybe light-hearted, but still, when you're announcing policy, are then going to be presumed, or you're allowing yourself to be opened up to be presumed that that's policy, it's going to... That 5 to 10% of extra voters that are available start to go, do I just sit at home again, as we saw particularly in the last election?
100%, because you always have to remember, right-wingers very rarely jump out of parties or to the other side as so dramatically as like the left tend to. So what they do is they just don't vote. This is why I've always said that Farage might win with a whopping majority in Parliament, but it'll be the lowest turnout we'll have ever seen. You know, this is, you know, he's really got to get this centre of the centre, but he can't do that because he's no control over the base. The base is all over the place. Every issue is a lightning rod of controversy because there is no kind of, we've got to do this because we need to get into power. They're so ideologically driven at points that it's just infuriating because, like I said, the path is there. What I will say, though, is when it comes to what we saw with Nigel Farage in Parliament over the ECHR, that wasn't a dead cat, that was a dead zoo of a distraction. Because let's look what happened. You had Sarah Pochin and her comments, you had Danny Kruger and his comments, Sia Youssef got dropped as head of policy, you then have the catastrophe over Kent County Council, which is all over the place, you know, Reform losing councillors and all over the place. They've also plateaued polling-wise. You know, they might be winning, but look at the individual poll, where you actually break it down statistically, they haven't moved. That's a problem. And that is what actually will define whether they get to this majority, which they need. Because if they get through on a wafer-thin majority, nothing they want to happen is ever going to happen. And you can blame the civil service all you like, it's not that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Peter Barnes, I know, will be stirring your texts and calls now.
My DMs are going to love it.
So make sure you call in. Is Peter wrong? Do you still see a clear road for Reform UK to victory? Do you think that people like the media, and like I'm doing today, take these type of stories too seriously and shine too much light on them? Should we just learn at times to have a bit of a laugh? And actually, should we just be holding the real people to account, which is this Labour government who are failing on immigration? And do you welcome the fact that Reform and Conservatives are coming together when it comes to things like the ECHR and migration? Is it time for both of them to knock their heads together, have a joint ticket on what they would do on this issue so the voters can see there is consensus on the right and an alternative to a Labour and maybe even Lib Dem Green coalition? God help us all. 0344 499 1000 if you want to call us, WhatsApp us and voice notes, 87222 if you want to text with the word talk, the starting message, and follow a message on X at talkTV. I'll see you after the break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Jonathan Gullis in for Ian Collins here on the home of common sense. That is Talk, and what a great start to the show we've had so far. We will get to your texts and calls in the latter half of this hour, but I want to go to my next guest. He's joining us down the line. He is a friend of ours here at Talk. His name is Mr. Matthew Torbett. He is a former Labour advisor, and he is very, very chipper because his beloved Stockport County thrashed Port Vale Football Club in my beloved Stoke-on-Trent area just the other night. Matthew, how are you doing?
Very chipper, as you say. Early days yet, though, Gullis. We'll see.
Well, look, Matthew, you know why we're on. Rachel Reeves has admitted that she was breaking the law by unlawfully renting out her swanky London home without the relevant licence that Southwark Council demands. She has held herself to a standard, to be fair, where she's actually submitted to Sir Keir Starmer that she should go before the commissioner that advises Sir Keir Starmer on the ministerial code. But quite remarkably, Sir Keir Starmer, within hours, replied to her saying he's had a chat and they've decided there's nothing to see here. The problem is, Matthew, that Southwark Council in October 2024, because I've looked at it myself, openly put on a press release out where they took a landlord and a letting agents, the letting agents being the ones who Rachel Reeves is predominantly blaming, for not applying for the relevant licence and fining them tens of thousands of pounds, which also, by the way, allows the tenants to claim back the rent they paid without the licence. So Rachel Reeves could be about to lose tens of thousands as well in rent paid back to her tenants. Is this, however, Matthew, a big story, or is this just certain media channels, like, for example, Talk, finding any excuse to swing at this Labour government?
I don't think it's just Talk. I think the media will take an interest. She's ultimately, it appears, broken the rules. I would probably say unwittingly, and I think the key thing for her, where she'll probably be okay, is the lettings agency she has used had a line in their agreement that said, we will let you know if you need this sort of licence. Now, they obviously haven't. She can only go off what she's got. And I do think that it opens up a conversation when you look at Angela Rayner, Rushanara Ali and others, that you sort of need a permanent civil servant that knows this sort of stuff. We need to allow politicians of any stripe to get on with running the country. Should they be resigning on basically, in this case, a bit of life admin? I don't think it will have the cut through in the way Angela Rayner did, ultimately because the headlines for Angela Rayner were basically the Deputy Prime Minister should have paid tax and hasn't. I think this is almost a little bit too niche to get the cut through that Angela Rayner did with hers. And I think, in a way, listen, I've been very critical of this Labour government, and you may expect me to also stick up for them at points and say, well, you would say that, Matthew. I would rather Rachel Reeves resign because she's plunged us into a recession. I would rather judge Rachel Reeves on her results. I wouldn't necessarily expect her to resign because she's rented a house and not had the correct paperwork and not been made aware by a lettings agency that she needs it.
Do you think we're too quick in this country to demand for politicians to resign? The Conservatives are coming out very aggressive out the gate, calling for her resignation, or at the very least an inquiry, they're even going as far as saying, into this very issue. Do you think that actually at times we need to remember that politicians are humans, people are allowed to make mistakes, and if they are mistakes that some might say in this case are minor, that would be some people's view, that we should be able to forgive and forget?
Partially, it's not going to happen because this is politics, and I think in a way Labour may reap what they sow because they were incredibly heavy-handed with this sort of stuff when they were in opposition. And obviously opposition is very easy. You just go look at them lot, they're hopeless, they're horrible, they're corrupt, and we won't be. And then actually you realise there are certain things in government that are out of your hands, particularly if you're the Prime Minister. You don't know your ministers' lives and their rental agreements and whatever else. So there's an element of that. It does concern me. Certain media outlets, I would say, particularly newspapers, that when I see headlines of how we got rid of Angela Rayner, that's not your job as a newspaper. Your job is to scrutinise, ultimately to hold politicians to account. Your job is not to get rid, and that goes the other way. I think what a lot of newspapers have seen is how essentially Pippa Crerar at the Guardian's stories about Boris and during COVID basically brought him down, and now there is almost an addiction in Westminster of like, who can we get next, who can we get to resign, and again, I'd rather people, Angela, there was no choice. I said at the time Angela will have to go, but ultimately I would rather her go because she's not built 1.5 million houses, because her renters reform isn't working, or whatever it might be. I think this niche sort of stuff with Rachel Reeves, and I have no doubt there will be others in time to come, because mistakes happen, people are busy, they're literally running a country. There'll be more of this, and I worry there's an addiction to headlines and otherwise.
But do you accept, Matthew, the problem for Rachel Reeves and many in his Labour government is the hypocrisy? I mean, Rachel Reeves herself tweeting from what appears to be her parliamentary X account for her constituency seat: "I welcome Leeds City Council's decision to expand their selective landlord licensing policy to include the Armley area." She goes on, "This scheme means private landlords in the area will be required by law to obtain a licence for any residential property." She obviously has for a long time, it appears, lived in the Southwark area where this has been going on. I think it's actually a Labour-led council. Can people really believe what Sarah Jones MP was saying on the media round this morning, which was Rachel Reeves simply didn't know that she needed to apply for this, when this is something she herself is campaigning for?
Yes, I think you can believe it purely because she almost certainly didn't send that tweet and will have absolutely no idea about any of what has just been put out there. It is normally done by staff members such as myself, and you'll know this. People have communications officers that put this stuff out. Ultimately, the MP will sign it off. To her, it's a good news story. Great, we can piggyback on it. I will say, however, it's hard to plead ignorance when, if that was Mr. Jones further on down the road, it is incumbent on him to know if he needs the right licence and therefore would be punished otherwise. So I'm quite relaxed. I think maybe there should be an inquiry, let Laurie Magnus do his thing. Ultimately, she might pay a fine. I don't think this meets the threshold for a resignation. Purely, and actually it's not a sensible way of doing things, is it passes the optics ever so slightly, and we shouldn't run things like that. We shouldn't run things on outrage levels and what happens on Twitter, but unfortunately this is the position we've got ourselves in politics. So I don't think it meets the threshold of Angela Rayner. If she has to pay a fine by the law, yeah, she should do so.
I was about to say, do you think Southwark Council should do the honourable thing, make sure there's not a two-tier system, which is a charge used against this Labour government time after time, and actually at least themselves look into this and determine whether they think a fine should be paid, bearing in mind, as I say, on the 18th of October 2024, in fact, I've tweeted it via my X account, the link to the story that makes it very clear that they took a landlord and a letting agent who hadn't applied for a licence through the system where they obviously faced a fine. Should Southwark Council do the right thing here and make sure Rachel Reeves, if required, has a fine levied against her?
Yeah, I think it's fair enough. I suppose the issue maybe is who's really liable and who's at fault. And I don't know, unfortunately, this sort of niche area of housing or lettings law, will it be the lettings agency that haven't done the correct due diligence and they should have to pay the fine? Is it incumbent on Rachel Reeves to do the checks anyway, just to be certain? I don't know. However, there's nothing wrong in the fact that if somebody has broken the law accidentally or otherwise, opening an investigation and ensuring that there isn't a two-tier. I think, again, it will just depend on who is really liable for this. And I'm sure there'll be, like the Spider-Man meme, lots of pointing fingers at each other on this, on who really has to pay, potentially. But, yeah, I don't see the harm in it.
And Matthew, final one from me. Do you see any opportunity for this Labour government to get some blue water, a bit of relief? It's been a pretty turbulent couple of weeks.
It's always possible, but I think, unfortunately, you're relying on other people making that blue water for you, that clear water for you. Is it Nigel Farage getting himself into all sorts of mither because he can't control his MPs? Is it the Tories continuing to be irrelevant and maybe their budget response, as I expect, will fall flat? That may save them from a budget that may also fall flat and anger people depending on how they feel about potential tax rises. I think, just to give my two penneth, like the two penneth rises that were affected, I think they should have done this in the first budget. I think you could have blamed Donald Trump and the trade tariffs and all the rest of it and gone, look, this is out of our hands. you were going to be unpopular anyway with some of the decisions you were making. Why not just come straight out the traps and try and recover this time? I think the problem she will now have is the media have already made much a meal of the fact that she said she wouldn't be coming cap in hand. There would not be further tax rises. And I think if you're that desperate, you're blaming Brexit and the Tories still. It's not going to go very well, I don't think. I have great concerns over it.
The Brexit argument I really find bizarre, Matthew. Why rehash the arguments from 2016 and indeed actually 2019, especially when Keir Starmer, who, let's not forget, was the face of a pro-second referendum, pro-Remain vote. Why would he want to rehash this argument, realign himself and remind everyone where he originally stood? And at the end of the day, be outflanked again by the Greens and the Lib Dems, who are simply going to say, well, if it's so bad outside the EU, why not go back in it?
I wonder, and I don't know whether they think this far ahead or whether it is just surviving each week, I wonder whether we will see an election, if Keir Starmer is still there, leaning into the more progressive elements that he's losing to the Lib Dems and the Greens, and we actually look to potentially join a customs union and have that battle again over things like the EU, because they're going to need those sort of votes to get them over the line. I don't think an anti-Farage vote is going to be enough, despite what we've seen in Wales. I think you're going to need something to tempt those Liberals back over, and I wonder if it is part of a long-term plan amongst some of the Blairites in Number 10 to sort of almost begin the process of rejoining parts of it. I could be totally wrong, but that's been my thoughts over the last couple of weeks as we've seen, the aims to blame Brexit and other things for it.
Well, you're not confident. Spencer Livermore, former aide to Gordon Brown, former head, I think, of campaigns it was for Ed Miliband in what was obviously the unsuccessful general election. He's now in charge of the elections in Wales and Scotland and the council elections across England next May. You're not having Lord Livermore is going to somehow reignite the Labour machine, make sure that you take on the fight with Reform UK and the Nationalists in Wales and Scotland. Do you think Keir's still on the clock? Do you think that Labour MPs might give him till next May, but after then he is for the chop?
Yes, I think it is. The pressure will be insurmountable if you've got a whole host of backbench MPs who are on quite small majorities because of the tactics of winning the general election. If we're losing Wales and Scotland, and ultimately I think at this juncture we're going to get battered, you're going to lose your seat. Why would you not? I'm worried we're going to do what the Democrats did. They should have swapped out Joe Biden after the midterms. They did quite well out of the midterms. I don't think we will do quite well out of our sort of midterms, if you will, with these local elections and council elections. Swap out now whilst you have time. And I know we're not a party that sort of do that sort of thing, but you can either do that or probably lose the next election. And if you want your legacy essentially to be, we were the ones that had a landslide victory, and in one term we ushered in Nigel Farage. That's up to you, really. Now,
Matthew, final question for me, that many listeners to this station think you should be joining Reform UK. They're begging for it to happen. You were inundated. I saw with my own eyes at Reform UK's party conference with selfies galore. Bit of a celebrity on the centre-right, despite being a raging lefty, and I say that with a loving affection. But, Matthew, have you not thought yourself as a proud progressive, maybe it's time to get in bed with Zach Polanski and the Greens?
No, listen, I've had messages. I believe I'm due to sit down with Zach. Maybe I'll be doing his podcast. We can have a nice chat. My hope, as I tell everybody, is Andy Burnham. I will still be continuing to campaign for Andy Burnham. People think Andy Burnham's gone. He has not gone. I can tell you that with 100% confidence. And I think he's the person I'll be looking to try and help get in after May, if as expected the results will go. So no plans for me to change party. And I think even if I was... if I got to a real point where I thought Labour were a real no-hoper, I've always been more independent-minded, and I would sit without a party, I think, and continue to talk from the sidelines in a very fair way, I hope, which is what I tried to do.
Well, Matthew, you're a good friend of us here on Talk, the home of common sense, and the listeners always enjoy hearing your voice. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, keep letting us know what you think. 0344 499 1000. That's how you call us, WhatsApp us and voice note us. You text the word talk to the number, which is 87222, with your message to follow on after. And message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, your texts and calls.
director looks like a penitentiary. Like, he looks like he's in some sort of like prison overalls begging to be released. But, you know, they're going to love it. Everyone's going to flock to it, aren't they? All the sort of, you know, short-fringed lunatics and lumberjack shirt-wearing, big-bearded, beard oil, sourdough munching Egypts are going to be queuing up to go to it. So fine, you know, let's just hope he registers it on his parliamentary expenses.
She's not a stupid person, despite what some people might think. She's a very intelligent person and would be seen desperately trying to do the right thing by the law. Of course she should. And this, I think, is a mistake, of course. But I think that it's embarrassing and difficult because it's the sort of thing when you're dealing with taxes and licensing and registration that has legs.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing that investigative journalists perfectly legitimately can and will continue to look through.
Absolutely.
What are the unintended consequences?
Yeah, and especially after Angela Rayner not paying her.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everybody. I tell you what, the time is tight. The people behind the glass trying to babysit me to make sure that we stick to the rules of the scheduling means we need to get straight to our callers. Who Sue from London, I'm coming to you now. You have a maximum of 2 minutes before I get a smack bottom. What do you want to say about Rachel Reeves?
Rachel Reeves should have to pay a fine and should have to give back all the rent she has received since she's been letting an unlicensed house. That is part of the law. Licensing of properties has been enforced for a long time in Southwark. And if she's with a letting agent, they will have informed her about all of the regulations. If she's going privately, then she should have found out about the regulations, the way you do about your gas safety check, your electrical regulations, and everything else that goes along with lettings. She's tried to get out of it. She's tried to apologise. If it was me, I used to live in Southwark. If it was me, I would be fined if I had broken the law like this. Exactly. And she should be.
Sue, I'm going to applaud you because I tell you what, it's just so good to have very good callers, very succinct, get to the point, and as you say, rightly say, people like Rachel Reeves should be held to account because if it was you, if it was me, if it was anyone else, we would be fined, as would probably the letting agents, as they have done previously. And as you say, this scheme has not just happened to appear in the last couple of months. This has been a long-running thing. Do you think this is a clear example, again, of two-tier justice, of a Labour-led council who will turn their back on not holding a Labour politician to account?
It's very clearly two-tier, absolutely and totally. It's so known in Southwark about licensing. I used to be a letting agent there. Everybody knows about it, and she should be fined to the maximum and have to pay back that rent.
Well, Sue, thank you so much for your call. That was a great call and with actual facts. So, Southwark Council, I'm imploring you to call me and tell me, are you going to launch an investigation, yes or no? Or will you find that spine that maybe has been magically missing in the last 24 hours? Let's go to Dan in Liverpool. He's also got his views on Rachel Reeves too.
Hello there. I think she should be criminally charged and I think she should be spending most of her days in a cell with the rest of these people. How come the police can say ignorance of the law is no excuse, but if you're an MP, especially for Labour, you seem to be able to get away with everything under the sun?
I tell you what, Dan, it's basic, right? If you were doing a GCSE in law or an A-level in law, as you say, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. If you were caught speeding, you can't go to the cops, oh, I didn't realise it was the 30-mile-per-hour zone. They'll say, tough, you need to do the speed awareness course or you need the points and the fines. How can she claim that she didn't know?
Oh, she can claim because, unfortunately, it seems like we're living in Yes Prime Minister, where they only do inquiries not to prove anything but to hide everything because they know us plebs, unfortunately, won't do anything because we're too stubborn. I'm sorry to sound irate right now, but I've had enough of this childish government. I can't even call them children because children would act a lot more mature than any of these people. I'm really sorry right now. After the incident that's happened right now, I want to say this story right now. I hope you'll give me a few seconds, please.
No, cool. Look, Dan, absolutely.
You know, I'm a mixed race background. After what's happened recently with a recent event, I work for a telecoms company. I have to go in and out of people's houses. I had a young mother. When I answered the door, she looked at me almost petrified, and I do not blame her one bit because this government is making people hate people like me. And I'm sorry, if I wanted to make this UK population racist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I have to do differently to the Labour government right now?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Well, Dan, unfortunately, I've got to go because the break's coming up, but thank you so much for your call and for your passion. Listeners, keep on tuning in. We've got a great second hour tuned up. So 0344 499 1000, 87222 and at talkTV on X. We'll see.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Jonathan Gullis in for Ian Collins on the home of common sense. That is Talk, and what a great first hour we've had so far. But we've got an even better second hour coming up, and let's go back over the stories of today. Rachel Reeves faces hypocrisy after renting out her £3,200 a month Dulwich home without the required Southwark licence, despite hiking buy-to-let stamp duty. She only applied yesterday after Number 10 waived our further scrutiny, yet failure to licence is a criminal offence with unlimited fines and rent payment. King Badenoch is demanding she go. Tory and Reform MPs are uniting behind Nigel Farage's bill to quit the ECHR, signalling a new right-of-centre alliance. The motion, however, lost 96 votes to 154 after Labour switched to vote against under pro-EU pressure, with the Liberal Democrats claiming all the credit. Symbolic or not, big-name Conservatives backed Nigel Farage as Kevin Badenoch led the I lobby, drawing a clear dividing line with Labour. And 60,000 blades are now off the streets. Ninja saws surrendered ahead of August ban, and knife robberies and homicides falling. With tougher age checks and online safe sales rules coming in, let's hope for less weapon carrying, fewer attacks and safer communities. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we go to our next guest, another great friend of ours here on the home of common sense, that is Talk, and one of, I think, the sharpest dressed men in Westminster, which even the French public seem to be styling themselves on. His name is Mr. Gawain Towler. He is a party board member of Reform UK and former special advisor, essentially, to Nigel Farage. Hello, Gawain. How are you, my friend?
Good day, Jonathan.
Well, Gawain, I must check. How are you? Because I saw quite a gruesome-looking photo on your X feed of, there you go, a wing mirror assaulted you. Is this Sadiq Khan's London coming after you?
Man versus wing mirror.
Man
Someone drove very close to me and I tried to avoid him and clattered myself into a wing mirror.
Oh, my word. So is this, do you think, Sadiq Khan's London coming after you, Grain? Is it because you're too busy calling it out, or do you think that just an innocent mistake?
I think it's an innocent mistake, and anyhow, I'm literally packing my flat at present to move to Wiltshire today, so this may be my response to it.
Are you constituent for Danny Kruger, are we? You're not East Wiltshire bound?
No, I've got to Lib Dem.
Oh, okay, well. For now, Grain, anyway, for now, I'm sure you'll change that in the near future. Grain, let's start off with what I think was a lovely scene. I think you would have welcomed it too. A rare outbreak of consensus on the right of centre in British politics. Nigel Farage putting forward his 10-minute rule bill, as they're called in Parliament, which is still a draft bill that you put down the floor of the House that can go all the way through to royal assent if the government is willing, which said that we should formally leave the ECHR. I know Nigel himself thanked a number of Conservatives, such as Robert Jenrick, Gavin Williamson and Suella Braverman, for backing that bill. You do require to have a certain amount of signatures for that bill to go forward, and indeed 80-odd Conservative MPs actually walking through the eye lobbies for it. Is this a blueprint for the future, Grain? Are we going to see more and more consensus building between Reform and the Conservatives, maybe even a coalition leading into the next election?
I can't see there being any chance of a coalition whatsoever. However, there are things that other people do good things and you can support them. And I suspect what's happened in this instance is a lot of Tories would like to be supporting their own bill in that case, in the ECHR. There's still, 40 Tories who didn't support leaving the ECHR. So I think that rather tells its own tale. But no, and of course, there are things that we agree on. That's normal in life. I'm sure there's things that we agree with the Labour Party on in some cases. In most of life and in most of politics, most decent people will coalesce around certain things. Obviously, in this case, Labour Party and the Lib Dems disagreed, but I don't think it's weird that people sometimes walk in the lobby together.
No, and I think it's good. And actually, Gwen, I must say, I was pleased to see it because it shows, I think, common sense, at least on the right to centre of British politics, and creating those clear dividing lines for people to be able to choose going in to a future general election. Although it did, as you can imagine, Gwen, stick in my teeth of it. I put down, and I'm only shamelessly plugging my own bill, a 10-minute rule bill called Asylum Seekers Removal to Safe Countries on the 14th of December 2022, where, guess what? A large amount, only 67 Conservative MPs voted for my bill at that time. The government at the time actually demanded that MPs did not vote for it. Simon Hoare, as you say, was one who actually voted against my 10-minute rule bill and actually abstained tactically on Nigel Farage's bill yesterday, which I think still shows the Conservative Party divided.
What is a tactical abstention on something so vitally important as the ECHR? How can you be in two minds?
Well, I agree with you, Graham.
It's not an abstention. It's a tactical withdrawal of moral thinking.
Well, I like that very much, Graham. I totally agree with you, and I think that's the problem that Kane Badenoch still faces. As you say, it's good to see more Conservative MPs, up from 67 to about 87.
It is good, but I mean, sometimes you need leadership, don't you? And in this instance, Nigel has shown that. It was very funny yesterday watching him being surrounded by every single Lib Dem they could find.
Well, I was going to say, Grain, what's your reaction to how Nigel was treated? Look, we all know in politics, in chambers, there's always a bit of back and forth, a bit of heckling, as long as it's always done in good nature. This did seem deliberately to try and almost talk over him so that he couldn't be heard.
Well, there was a bit of that, and also it's a 10-minute rule bill. You've only got 10 minutes, and the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, really didn't feel that she was in control of what the Lib Dems were up to. They were trying to disrupt him out of his 10 minutes. But look, in politics, you've got to have a thick skin. I suspect in other walks of life, Nigel will be standing there and say, "Oh no, I'm anxious. You can't make me do this." But you can't do that in politics. You've got to stand up for what you believe, and you've got to have the backbone to face these people down. Not everything in life should be partisan, but their behaviour was deeply partisan, and I think it didn't do them any favours. It makes them look bad. It doesn't damage Farage in any way, but it made them look petty and churlish.
Well, actually, Graham, we have a clip. If we just play it for the sake of those who didn't tune in yesterday, so they can see for themselves what it was like for Nigel as he was introducing what I think is one of the most important bills of this parliamentary session.
the British people, despite being told by all the businesses and all the trade unions and much of the press and most of this House,
didn't you promise to leave?
Managed,
show some respect to another
despite everything, children be quiet. Managed.
Order. I will be responsible for maintaining order in this chamber. Nigel Farage.
Yes, Madam Deputy, I'm sure you will allow me the opportunity to continue to try and say something without such constant interventions, and I thank you for that.
Well, there you have it, listeners. That was the behaviour towards Nigel Farage. I think Danny Kruger, actually, I heard him say the exact type of thing I would want to hear, which is show some respect, as you say. A bit of friendly joshing, a bit of friendly heckling, but at the end of the day, as you say, it's a 10-minute rule bill, and there are unwritten conventions and expectations of members of the House to allow that person their right of passage to be able to put forward their case, because the Lib Dems did have their 10 minutes in reply to say why they're against it. So it wasn't as if the Lib Dems didn't have an opportunity to respond.
I didn't see Farage and Danny Kruger and others heckling Ed Davey.
No, exactly. And I think it's poor form. And as you say, Gawain, it will actually only help Reform UK, I personally believe, with voters.
That's what behaviour.
Now, Gawain, Peter Barnes, we had on the show earlier, we know that he likes to certainly needle Reform UK. He was saying that this was a dead, not a dead cat strategy, a dead zoo strategy, after what has been the Sarah Poachin affair over her comments here on Talk to a Talk listener. The Daily Mirror I saw was running an attack on Danny Kruger from a video where he was supposedly making some anti-LGBT comments. I don't believe that for a second. I know Danny very well, but they were trying to obviously spin that he was somehow being homophobic. They say that Lee Anderson had this comment, which I'm assuming, Gawain, and I'd like to get correction if I'm wrong, is off the cuff, where he sort of was making a joke about bringing back 1960s three-wheelers.
Yeah, he was. It was clearly ripping the mick. He was talking about how the Motability scheme is a charity, and the boss of it is on 500,000, and the finance director is on 400,000, and he was querying the sense in that. He was pointing out that some people get a Motability, a brand new electric Merc or Beamer, and it sits in and they use it once or twice for the person who is nominally disabled, but the rest of the time it's just a family car. And he's saying, well, if we are going to provide Motability cars, he almost is suggesting maybe we should provide ugly ones, unfashionable ones.
But Gawain, do you worry, obviously, with Sarah, and I quote Nigel here's ugly words here on Talk, with Lee making these off-the-cuff remarks that do allow the media to try and portray this as somehow serious policy? I would agree with you. I understood what Lee was saying and understood what Lee was doing, but obviously the write-up's been that this is now what Reform UK wants to do. Is there an issue here where Reform has had quite a choppy couple of weeks and they're undermining their own credibility, particularly with swing voters, and particularly where we now look like there is a plateauing in the polling for Reform, and maybe some people trying to claim a ceiling's been hit?
I don't think there is a plateau in the polling, actually, if you look. Yes, YouGov always keeps us down a bit, but the rest of them, we're up to yesterday, I think, in one poll, so it's a strange sort of plateau. It's a sort of Himalayan plateau. Oh, maybe not the Himalayas, maybe a Grampian plateau. But no, it's things and swings and roundabouts. Sometimes a couple of things go wrong and other things go right. I'm not overly concerned. What you're dealing with in Reform are this remarkable odd thing in politics: humans. We're not used to humans in politics, and you've got a bunch. And sometimes they say cuff stuff, and it's not to be taken seriously because that's not how humans operate. The serious stuff was questioning how come 43,000 people with ADHD have received Motability cards. Think of the cost of that. This is getting rather strange. And there's about 50,000 with anxiety. Now, if you are so anxious that you need a disabled car, surely you shouldn't actually be driving, really. To a certain extent, if you need a Motability car because of your anxiety, one has to wonder, how bad is your anxiety? Because if it's bad anxiety, perhaps you shouldn't actually be behind the wheel. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a licensee of these things, but it does seem to me an odd mix. And as I say, and as Lee was pointing out yesterday, before his three-wheeler comment, he was basically, so you can see the trotters going down, or one of those Izettas with the front bubble cars with a front opener. But what he was pointing out is, how can a charity boss be on £500,000 a year?
Totally agree.
Where's that money coming from?
Well, and actually, I will say, Grain, what I thought was really impressive, which gets unreported, is the fact that a lot of the welfare work has been done with, for example, the Centre for Social Justice, one of the most respected think tanks in SW1, Westminster, has clearly been researched and considered, and goes to show reform is seriously engaging externally with those think tanks on the centre right, as well as obviously with business, the business community and economic experts. And I'm sure we'll look forward to Nigel's speech where he starts to frame the economic case for Reform UK next week.
Yes, on Monday. I mean, the bottom line is we are well aware there's not that many of us at the and the top of reform. There's not that many people. We need to reach out to others. We know we don't know everything. And again, as I say, not only are we humans, but we also understand our own failings and our own lack of capacity. And to improve that, to provide a decent service to our country, we have to reach out to people with greater expertise than ourselves. That's, again, the sort of thing that normal people do. If you don't know how to hang a door, you bring in a carpenter. And so I think actually people will be quite pleased about this. They'll respect us for the fact that we accept that we don't know everything and we need to learn. There's a bit of humanity there. There's a bit of self-deprecation. I think it's only a good thing.
Well, Graham, with the need to learn, what do you think of Rachel Reeves? The fact that she apparently, despite having lived in Southwark for a long period of time and this licensing scheme having been in existence for a long period of time, she wasn't aware that she needed to have a licence, or she's blaming the letting agents for it. Do you think this is a resignation level issue, or do you think this just goes to show a lot of what we see with Labour, which is a sort of them and us attitude, one rule for them, one rule for everyone else, a two-tier system where Rachel Reeves is expected to be allowed to apologise, but anyone else would probably be fined, wouldn't they?
Oh, I think she should be allowed to apologise, and quite right too, but maybe she should be fined as well. I don't think golly, I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay then. No, that's fine. No, it doesn't. Again, that's not how life is for the whole country. And it's very, very strange that somebody that powerful, and supposedly, if she's the sort of person who has the details and the capacity to run our economy, she should have the capacity to run her own. And I do not believe that her agent didn't point this out to her. I really don't. And if they didn't, then they too should be in trouble.
Well, I've pointed out, Grain, on my own X profile that Southwark Council took a landlord and the letting agents through the court system and fined them extensively back on the 18th of October 2024 for this exact type of case. Do you think that Labour-led Southwark Council might find a backbone and actually investigate their own Labour Chancellor and actually make sure the rules apply to her as they will do to any other resident of that council area?
I heard you earlier putting out a call to Southwark Council to do precisely that. Do phone me up. Look, if they don't, I think there's going to be hell to pay. I think residents in Southwark who are also paying those fees, paying that licence, doing everything properly, abiding by the law, will be turning to their council and saying, what? How can this be? It doesn't feel fair. It is not decent to behave like that, and it is not fair. Now, it may be that it was an oversight. That's okay. It happens. But if it was an oversight, she needs to pay it all back, as your previous caller said. Somebody who was a letting agent in Southwark, who knows what she's talking about and was very, very clear what the ramifications should be for Rachel Reeves. And it's going to be very hard for her to stand up there and tax us more and cost us more, as she will in a couple of weeks, as is very clear she's going to do, when she herself has been basically fixing the system or failing to notice her own responsibilities. It makes it very, very difficult. I think her position is really in trouble. That being said, if you're the Prime Minister, can you afford to lose your Chancellor a couple of weeks before the budget?
Yeah. It's a great point, Grain. And the final one from me is, of course, the migration, which seems to be the gift that keeps on giving for Reform UK. But we find out that Hadush Kabatu, who was allowed to wander out the prison gates, was then now paid £500 of British taxpayers' money, which I've been told by my producer Finn, by the way, Grain, is equivalent to 14 months on the average salary of an Ethiopian. So he's going to do very well in Ethiopia over the next 12 months in order to be able to get on board that flight. The one-in, one-out scheme, which Labour loves to claim now is only a pilot, has seen us take 42 out and accept 23 in, but thousands still come over by small boat. And ironically, the one person we know who has come back after being deported to France is still in the UK. Do you think Labour have any chance of getting hold of this situation. Do you think Shabana Mahmood, despite all the write-ups by many in the Westminster lobby, despite all the tough talk that she gives about how angry she is, do you actually think her and Keir Starmer ever going to have credibility on this issue?
They have to get a grip. How long? When was it that was it Charles Clarke who told us that the Home Office was not fit for purpose? It hasn't been fit for purpose for over 30 years. Yeah. Home Secretary after Home Secretary after Home Secretary has failed to get a grip, failed to basically deal with their civil service and get them moving and get them working. I think the internal rules must be deeply complex, and nobody seems to have the sheer drive to do it. Now, Shabana Mahmood, she gave a great speech last night, by the way, but Shabana Mahmood is a woman of some ability, clearly, but I think she's being overwhelmed by the sheer level of incompetence in that Home Office.
And I think with the Prime Minister and I think the problem is Keir Starmer can blame all the comms experts. As someone like you, Gwen, who worked in communications, it's all well and good to say, oh, it's not me, it's the story's not got out. I actually just think it comes back to the decision maker. Ultimately, every decision this guy makes is always undermining the very mission of growth, for example, or controlling our borders. And the only time he ever seems to be happy is when he's jet-setting and signing deals that were done under previous Conservative-led governments in order to try and make himself feel better, or, in my view, collect the photos for the photo album one day to show him hanging out with the world leaders.
So I think that's possibly a little bit mean. I'm sure he's trying to do better than that. But his problem is he didn't have a plan. When he got into office, he didn't know what he was doing it for. Sue Gray didn't have a plan. He didn't have a plan. He didn't arrive in number 10 knowing what he wanted to do. He had a sort of mood that he wanted to create rather than actions he needed to take. And because he didn't arrive at a plan, as they say, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And right now, we're watching the failure of his failure to plan.
Well, Gawain Towler, thank you so much for joining us here on Talk, the home of common sense. Gawain Towler, party board member for Reform UK and former Director of Communications for Reform UK as well. Let us know what you think about what Gawain has been saying. 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp, voice note and call us. Do you think Lee Anderson should be allowed to make some off-the-cuff remarks? Should we not take everything everyone says so seriously all the time? Do you think, for example, that Rachel Reeves should actually not just say sorry, but also should be fined like any other resident of Southwark would be? Should Southwark Council open an investigation today? We here on the Home of Common Sense are demanding it. Will they have the guts enough to come on this station and tell us whether or not they will do it? You can also text the word talk and start your message to 87222 and message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, let's go through the massive amount of texts you've got waiting for me.
full stamp duty.
If we start a process where we're paying people like this, who are foreign criminals, that's the difference here. One thing, being economical and incentivising people to go that are here to save the British taxpayer money. There's some common sense in that approach. There is no common sense in providing a financial incentive for somebody to go and commit a crime, go to prison for a few months, and then be released and then be paid a huge sum of money to us, £500, in Ethiopia, in Eritrea, in other countries. It is an enormous amount of money.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome back, everybody, here to the home of common sense. That is Talk. We are going to our next guest before I read some of your texts. His name is Ken Hines. He's the CEO of Communities Against Violence, and he's joining us down the line. Hello, Ken. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, hey, I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on your platform.
No, look, delighted, because, look, I do think, actually, it's always easy to moan about a government, but there does seem like some good progress has been made. Nearly 60,000 blades have been taken off the streets of England and Wales via police seizures and surrender schemes tied to the government's knife crime plan and Ronan's Law, which bans ninja swords as of the 1st of August 2025. This includes 7,512 weapons handed in during July's ninja sword surrender and 47,795 zombie knives and machetes surrendered last year, plus seizures by Border Force and County Lines operations. The government frames this as progress towards its goal to halve knife crime, pointing to the latest ONS figures. Knife-enabled homicides down 18% to the year to June 2025, and overall knife offences down 5% to 51,527 over the same period. I was keen, Ken, do you feel like action's being taken, the government's taking this seriously? Do you think we should be giving the government credit here, or do you think there is still places we need to go that we haven't done so yet?
But it's always welcoming when you have a reduction in the violence and the death, the homicide from knife crime. But personally, I've always said it's not the knife that's the issue, it's the person behind the knife. And unfortunate, this might look good today, but who knows what's going to look like tomorrow? Because unless we deal with a person deeper trauma and also what we call that red mist, that that common sense can go out the window. This is only a lull in the violence. And because I don't see many courses around emotional well-being. I don't see that being taken serious enough in the schools, particularly with young people who's under a great deal of pressure. And I feel that when you raise young people's self-esteem, crime will reduce a lot further. So yes, it's welcoming to know that I am part of this, of getting knife off the streets, a part of the street father, part of working alongside Farron Paul to actually confront these young men. I would say confront, I would like to say challenge these young men into giving them up. And the simple reason that when we do this with young people, they're unlikely to go and get another knife under any other condition. Unlike when the police take a knife of one of these youngsters, as soon as they get out of the custody, the first thing they go for is another knife. So we've got to work on the mindsets.
I think, Ken, you make some great points there. Just quickly to make sure I quote Shabana Mahmood, who is the Home Secretary, too many young lives are lost each year to knife crime. This government is determined to halve knife crime. We will pursue this mission relentlessly, doing everything we can to get these weapons off our streets. I think you make a really good point, though, there, Ken, that the problem we have here is it's all well and good taking the knife off and getting that statistic that you can tick a box, you can put this number on a leaflet, or a politician can put this into a press release. The harder work comes from the preventative action. And the problem is successive governments, both Labour and Conservative, have failed to, I think we can rightly say, in preventative action when it comes to young people, particularly, as you say, the people you'll be dealing with via your great work. What are the problems that you're encountering with particularly these young men? What is it that you think is needed to convince these young men that having a knife on them is not the answer to any of their problems?
I feel that what's enabling most youngsters to carry these more horrendous looking Rambo's knives and things of that nature it's the justice system. It's a criminal justice system that says that if you're under 18, we are just going to give you a slap on the wrist time and time again. What I find in doing my work in trying to dissuade them from carrying such weapon is that they say, well, my friend's he's got done, and he's got a badge of honor, a tag on his foot, okay, that makes him look like he's a cool guy, right? And so we're giving the wrong message, when I believe it's not about throwing people in prison and throwing away the key, but it's a combination of the carrot and the stick. Is the simple fact is that yes, short, sharp shock treatment, along with some emotional well-being support to toughen, to give them the resolve and to give them the tools to make better decisions, is the way forward. But don't wait till they become a serial abuser at 18 and then become into a serial murder at 19 to then say, well, we're going to throw the key away, because the damage has already been done to the wider community. We need that when these youngsters commit any sort of offence with a weapon, at the first instance, they need to be held to account. And that account means that it's not, they just can't come back with a slap on the wrist. There've got to be some sort of sanction to know, wow, that was scary. I don't want to go there again. And if we can get those in the first instant, they won't become, like I did, a serial abuser. Yes?
Yeah,
so that's
totally.
From my lived experience.
Well, I was about to say, Ken, one of the things I love talking to you about is the fact that you are someone with lived experience, and therefore your great work as the CEO of Communities Against Violence does so much. Thank you so much, Ken, for joining us today and sharing your insights on today's announcement. Of course, if anyone has been affected by anything we've said, please note there are groups like Communities Against Violence that you can reach out to. And most importantly, make sure that you do indeed make sure you inform the police of anyone that you know may indeed be carrying a knife. We cannot allow these vicious weapons on our streets. A few texts that have come in. Afternoon, Jonathan. If Reeves doesn't get a fine, then we really are in animal farm territory. That's David from the Cotswolds. Another one here. Reeves must be certain she isn't getting sacked if she's rented her London house out. That's Mike from Murfield. That's a very good point indeed. Another one here. Hi, Jonathan. Reeves should face a fine at the very least. After all, me and the man in the street would certainly get one. That's Phil, who's in Wales. And he also adds on, great show. Thank you so much, Phil. Jonathan, Reform and Tories should pipe down regarding Reeves. She is a disaster and over the pocket. The budget will do for her. And please, God, the local elections will see the back of Starmer. Neil from Salisbury thinks, just let Reeves be Reeves, let Starmer be Starmer. They'll take care of themselves. In regards to the comment by Kane Baylock about having an inquiry, Rob from Taplow says, inquiries cost money that we simply don't have. And another one here from Andrew. I know someone in Southwark who was not aware of the licence. Even though it was the agent's incorrect advice, she had to refund 12 months' rent to the tenant. Interesting that people in this particular council area are having to live with the consequences of their mistakes and their actions. Will Rachel Reeves face the same too? Can rule breakers be rule makers? 0344 499 1000 if you want to call us, WhatsApp us, or voice note us. 87222 if you want to text the word talk at the starting message, as well as follow and message us on X at talkTV. We'll see you after the break.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Jonathan Gullis, in for the great Ian Collins. What a show we've been having so far. Great texts, great calls, great conversation with great guests. And we've got more of that coming down the line. Next, Ben Hopkinson. Oh, sorry, I don't know why I almost tripped over his surname then. Hopkinson, sorry, Ben, who's the head of housing and infrastructure at the Centre for Policy Studies. Well, what a day it is for talking about housing once again for this government. Maybe just not the type of discussion they want us to focus on. But Ben, I don't want to really get into Rachel Reeves, although I would love to get a comment towards the end. What I want to get into is I think this renters' rights bill that's now actually received royal assent and become an act of Parliament. I've seen my social media inundated with Labour communications about this is great, ending no-fault evictions finally for tenants against those pesky landlords that just apparently recklessly kick everyone out as soon as they want to, making sure that there's a fairer system when it comes to challenging unfair rental increases, etc., etc. Of course, there's bad landlords in the system. Of course, there are horrific cases that have led to, as we've seen, that tragic case of that 2-year-old losing his life due to inhaling black mould. And I've seen firsthand, as my time as a former Member of Parliament in Stoke-on-Trent North, the very disgraceful situation that some landlords leave their properties in. In fact, I even introduced a change to the law that said that for buildings of historical importance, there should be an increased fine rather than the £1,000 cap fine on the first offence for rogue and absent landlords. However, Ben, I think there's going to be quite a lot of unintended consequences, and I was keen to hear from you. Do you think that this bill is all it's going to end up being hyped to be? Is this actually long-term going to work in the interests of renters, or is this going to see landlords withdraw from the market and inevitably will lead to, therefore, rent prices going up because of a shortage of supply?
Well, I think to start off, to have a healthy rental market that serves tenants to give them the flexibility and security that they need, you need to have benefits for landlords. Landlords ultimately need to have a sense that it's worth them buying properties, letting them out, and then holding them. So the bill, well, I guess the Act now, is not going to do that. It's going to make it much harder for landlords to regain their properties once they let them out. It's going to make it much harder for landlords to impose rent increases, which actually, through the tribunal system that it's set up, it's kind of brought in rent controls through the back door, completely unintentionally. And it's adding lots more regulation to landlords. I mean, as you've already seen today, Rachel Reeves can't keep up with the regulations on landlords, and this is just going to add more to it.
Ben, one of my concerns is the fact that I spoke to a landlord yesterday and he was telling me that, for example, you could shake on a deal that says £800 a month for maybe some flat in part of the country. And that actually, once that tenancy has been agreed, even within the first 6 months, the tenant will be able to challenge that price and say they want it at a fair market value. That leads to, therefore, a tribunal, which could then see the deal unwinded. Maybe the price goes down, but it certainly can't ever go up, even if the landlord has rented out the property below market value, which some may do on some occasions, in order to get their properties off their hands and into the hand, and have an income. I saw as well a post which quite disturbed me, which says that some legal experts were warning about the fact that, according to the new Act, you can't ask for the month's rent until the tenant signs the contract. You need to be aware that once the contract is signed, if the tenant then refuses to pay over the rent, the contract must still stand and you will have to hand over the keys. If the tenant then refuses to pay thereafter, you have to go for a Section 8 proceedings for arrears. But you can't do this until at least 3 months' rent is outstanding, and you have to give 4 weeks' notice for that. So effectively, you can't do anything for 4 months to just get the process started. This is a nightmare scenario. These are the kind of things that you're on about here, the unintended consequences that many landlords now will be speaking with legal experts in this area and going, you know what, I just don't want the hassle. Or do I sign up with Serco and get one of these 10-year luxury deals to lend my property out for illegal migrants, which is also being offered in places like I live in Stoke-on-Trent to many landlords presently?
Yeah, so that nightmare scenario that you're describing, where a tenant signs a lease and then just doesn't pay and you can't evict them for 4 months, it's actually longer than that, because you'd need to get the tribunal to rule that they're kind of in massive arrears, and then you'd need to join the queue to get bailiffs around to actually evict them. So there's a very real chance that you could go about a year or more without having any rental income, and that's disastrous for landlords and makes you wonder why even bother. So ultimately, the kind of suite of legislation means that if you're a landlord, you better be letting it out to someone that you know or someone who you can verify is going to be a good tenant. And that means that for people who are just moving into their first property or don't have a kind of a stellar CV, for example, they probably won't have landlords let to them. And if they don't know any landlords, they probably won't be able to get a private tenancy. And those are the kind of people who the bill is really aimed to help. And they are actually at the kind of coalface of being without any chance of ever having a private rental. So the disastrous consequences are real, and I think we're going to start feeling them once the act really gets into motion.
I'm still really hit by the fact that when President Millet, and of course he's now well spoken about after that unexpected but big electoral victory he had recently, one of the first things he did was very quickly deregulate the property sector, particularly the rental sector. And I think vacancies within Buenos Aires went up by 45% within the first 6 months, as in terms of properties that were coming forward in order for people to be able to rent, which at the same time, therefore, brought rental prices down because there was more supply on the market. Do you want to see any future government manifesto from any political party take very seriously the supply and demand issue and be willing maybe to even say they should be willing to withdraw this act to Parliament and come back with other ideas, maybe around Section 21 notices that is fair to tenants but also, as you say, fair to landlords too?
Yeah, so if you're kind of the Labour Party and you have this ideological hatred of landlords, the best way to kind of punish them is to build many more homes. So forcing landlords to compete against each other rather than just lopping on loads and loads of extra regulation to them. So the main reason why we have kind of these horror stories from tenants with their rogue landlords is not because of a lack of regulation, it's a lack of supply. So there's a vacancy rate of less than 1% in London. So that means landlords are very confident that they can get a tenant in, which means that there's no need for them to do maintenance on the property or to charge kind of an affordable rent because they know that they'll always have a queue for tenants. So ultimately, what we need is not more regulation. We need to make it much easier to build homes. And you can see landlords actually compete. So Austin in Texas built 20,000 new flats last year.
Wow.
That's the equivalent of 180,000 in London. And rents have fallen. And landlords are now competing, offering months off of rent to get tenants to re-sign. And that's possible. We just need to build more.
And then finally, Ben, if I may, obviously, Rachel Reeves, you pointed out earlier, regulation has caused a headache here. Do you think this scheme that's been going on in Southwark, and indeed she herself has campaigned for in Leeds, where she's obviously a constituency member of Parliament, these agreements that licences that landlords have to sign up to, do they actually have any really good effect? Do they hold landlords to a higher standard, or is it just simply a tick box exercise that never really actually drives up anything? Because as you say, ultimately demand is so high and supply is so low that basically, and councils probably don't even have the funds to properly go around and vet all these properties, that many people are able just to slip through the net and be rogue and absent landlords.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Rachel Reeves wishes it wasn't a thing. So these regulations are just kind of tick box exercises that you can get caught out on. I'm sure it was an honest mistake in Reeves's case, but the fact that we have so much regulation for landlords just makes it much more likely that you make a mistake, and ultimately that disincentivizes more people to become landlords, more people to let out their properties.
Well, look, Ben Hopkinson there from the Centre for Policy Studies, who's the head of housing and infrastructure. Thank you so much for joining us and showing that great example there. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about the Renters' Rights Bill? Are you something this is you welcome, the end of no-fault evictions, the ability to challenge landlords over their prices that they charge per calendar month? Or, as Ben's been pointing out, are you concerned of the unintended consequences of well-meaning legislation, but ultimately will drive more landlords out the market and do more harm to housing supply at a time when Labour has it's been reported, accepted they will not be able to hit their promised 1.5 million homes by the end of this Parliament. Well, 0344 499 1000 is how you get in touch with us, if via WhatsApp, via voice note, or indeed making a phone call. 87222 is how you text us the word talk at the start of your message. And you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Just so you know, in the last hour, the opposition leader on Southwark Council, Liberal Democrat, has called for an investigation by Southwark Council into Rachel Reeves, the landlord of the area of which this is currently, this house in Dulwich is under the jurisdiction of. My amazing producer Finn has been on the phone with Southwark Council saying that I'm being a gobby so-and-so and demanding they open an investigation as well. And it's about time they hold Rachel Reeves the same standards they would hold anyone else in their area. And they have told us they're working on a response. So we hope to bring with you an exclusive in the next hour of what Southwark Council intends to do. Let's hope it's the right thing. No two-tier justice in Southwark, we hope. Well, we'll soon find out. We'll see you after the break.
Axel was ordering suspicious Amazon packages to a neighbour's house. The neighbour complained he kept having to receive them, and Alphonse said, "I will tell Axel to stop ordering them." Did he question his son as to what he was ordering online? Why he was ordering a knife on Amazon? We don't know. But what we do know is they failed to stop their son. They bought him the tablet that he researched genocide on. They allowed him to conceal ricin in his messy bedroom. They did not alert the police and have him detained when a week prior to the massacre, Alphonse stopped his son from getting in a cab to go to his old school, presumably to commit another attack.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everybody. Jonathan Gullis here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk, and what a show we've been having. What a load of texts and calls we're getting. I've just had someone tweet me on X. They shared a link to someone called Moving Home with Charlie is the name of the account. So someone I'm assuming who knows this area. He said, this is a very serious point about Rachel Reeves being an unlicensed landlord. It is a landlord's own responsibility to abide by the rules. The liability rests with the landlord for breaches of landlord law. Agents have other liabilities they're responsible for, but this isn't one. Inadvertently, as she said, is meaningless. The law was broken. And blimey, aren't you all feeling that too? We've got here Paul in Fife. Any way you look at it, Reeves must go. If she knew she needed a licence but never applied for one, then sorry, she must go. If she genuinely didn't know, it shows her complete ignorance of a sector that she's intending to tax to death. As Chancellor and a landlord, she should have had a licence. Spite moving the asylum seekers into these hotels, was still getting a huge sum of taxpayers' cash. Another one here. Is it possible that Starmer and Rachel from accounts would actually like her to resign over this minor infringement of the law? This would suit them both, rather than sucking her for being an utterly incompetent chancellor. When will this cabinet get on with governing the country instead of constantly putting out their own fires? That's Kaz in Bedford. Another one here. Reeves' housing rental gaff is just coming out now, so it deflects from the catastrophe which is coming in November, referring to the budget. And Neil has text, please, Jonathan, join Reform UK. One of these happens every show. And stand in Staffordshire Moorlands. We desperately need your help. Well, Neil, thank you very much for the kind words. I know Karen Bradley, the Conservative MP there, very well, and I can assure you I will not be standing in Staffordshire Moorlands any time soon, but thank you for your vote of confidence in me. Well, let's go to our callers. Craig in York, who wants to talk about the Renters' Rights Bill. Hello, Craig.
Hiya. Look, I had rental properties in South Africa, and I got out of the market for pretty much the same reason. It became untenable. But and I moved into commercial property. Now, what I would do here is that I will then rent the property to my children, and then share the profits when the time comes. Or I will turn my property into an Airbnb. Or quite simply, I'll rent it out to Mears or Serco, the company is doing it. There's no ways that I'm going to run the risk of having such a big investment and on day one that somebody can turn around and say, oh, I'm not going to pay you. And anybody who thinks that that is fair is just... it's just madness.
You sound obviously genuinely, as you say, very concerned about this piece of legislation. It's very rare that one single piece of legislation can have such an impact. Are there many like you, Craig, who are having the same conversation?
Well, 100%. Well, look, we do it because we want a return on investment. And obviously, so that means if I've got that property for 20 years, let's say I've paid $100,000 for it and it's now worth X amount. So am I supposed to charge rental based on what I paid 20 years ago, or think I want a return on investment, and I'm a businessman and I do business. Now I'm going to look at the best kind of return on investment. So I'll do Airbnb, for example. It will lie empty for 9 months of the year, and for the 3 months I can charge somebody that comes in for a weekend, has a bit of a party or whatever it is. I get it cleaned up and it can stay empty for another 2 weeks. Don't have all the hassles with the renters or anything like that. Or alternatively, I mean, I rent it out to my children. They can get, obviously they'll get a favourable discount from me, but I don't see why I should have to give other people.
Especially when, Craig, you take risk, right? So, for example, like you say, that asset is your asset. If it's something, all the plumbing goes wrong, all the electrical needs rewiring, if the roof needs redoing, that's tens of thousands of pounds that has to come out of your pocket.
100%. The government's not queuing up and saying, well, we'll partner with you and we'll help you pay the roof or anything like that. In actual fact, I mean, they look at every other loophole that they can take money from you, everything. So, I understand why landlords, and there is some dodgy landlords, but there's very good landlords out there as well. Very good landlords, and they're getting a raw deal.
It feels like the few is tarnishing the many, right, Craig? It feels like the few rogue ones are tarnishing everyone else in the industry.
100%, and that's why, and it's going to end up in a disaster because the people that are trying to get on property aren't going to be able to.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for that call. We go to Alan in Birmingham, who's also, I think, calling in to talk about what he's doing with his own properties as well. It's great to be hearing from landlords and having their voice platforms. Hello, Alan, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thanks. I've got to watch my blood pressure, though, because once we talk about this government and landlords and housing, I have to be very careful. I'm at that age. Yeah, you just said, do you know other landlords that are selling? I know 4, myself and 3 others, and another guy we spoke to, who's got a couple of renters, and he's saying, yeah, the more we talk to him and the reasons why we're bailing, he's sort of saying, yeah, I'm thinking of doing it myself because it's too uncertain. Even if you do the 5-year contract with the government, which sounds great on paper, no doubt they'll change the rules. They'll suddenly, these people will have rights to buy the house if they've been in it for 5 years. There'll be legislation, thanks to Ed Miliband and the like, about insulation. You have to have like 300 millimetres of insulation outside of your roof and your air source heat pumps and all that nonsense, which doesn't work, but the government don't seem to realise that. So I'm getting out, selling the lot, which means I've spent my life, this has been my pension plan as a builder, self-employed since my 20s. What was that noise?
I have no idea, sorry. So I think we had a technical issue our side. I apologise for that.
That's okay. I've spent my life building this plan, really, to retire and be self-sufficient. I've been self-sufficient all my life. I haven't been a burden on the state at all. And that's all gone now within the last 5 years. It's just disappeared. So I've got to sell everything, and then we'll just be pulling on the state for pensions and benefits and all. It's insane. It's absolutely insane what this government are doing.
I mean, people don't realise this bill is obviously going to just add further burden. In fact, even take massive risk with the fact that you won't get paid potentially over a year before you could even get paid from the day someone moves into a property if it goes all the way to a tribunal. I think there's only 34 tribunal judges in the entire country. So imagine the backlog that there could be in that space. Of course, during that time, that's a mortgage potentially that the bank's still saying you need to pay, but you're not able to pay because you're not getting the rent from it as you expected on your investment, which means you're going to have to find that money from elsewhere. Then, of course, Rachel Reeves is even looking at adding national insurance as a way of any earnings that come in via landlords, and indeed, actually, with her potential income tax trick that she wants to play, which might mean those on payroll get away with staying as they are. Self-employed people who work in the building trade, for example, might end up being screwed, Alan, at the end of the day, because they'll end up suddenly paying a lot more tax in order for Rachel Reeves to fill the black hole that she herself has created. And then there's even the whispers about capital gains tax being even put on potentially prime residences, or even being put up on those who obviously have rental properties like yourself. I mean, is this one of the most hostile environments for a landlord you've experienced in your lifetime?
It's by far the worst government I've ever experienced in my entire life. I'm not normally that political, but I've never hated a government or a prime minister as much in my entire life. And I've got good reason, I think. I feel like they're coming at us from all angles. And then every day, on the flip side, every day there seems to be another front bench minister that accidentally didn't realise the rules. But isn't it funny, a bit like the banks, when they accidentally make a mistake, they always end up a lot better off. They never make a mistake, say, I've accidentally paid £40,000 more than I should have done. It's always the other way around, which makes you question, is it really a mistake, or are they just treating us like fools?
Well, Alan, I think... Well, Alan, sorry to have to let you go, but due to time I have to. But thank you for your call. Thank you to both Alan and Craig who've come in there, both landlords, both telling you that they're either not going to rent their properties or indeed sell them entirely. This is the impact of this legislation. You've heard it here on the home of Common Sense, that is Talk. After the break, we go and speak about Rachel Reeves looking to put 2p up on income tax and break a manifesto pledge. Would you ever forgive Labour ever again if they broke that promise? 0344 499 1000 87222 or message for us on X at talkTV. I'll see you shortly.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed me, Jonathan Gullis, here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk, sitting in for the great Ian Collins. And blimey, what another great hour we have got coming up for you. But at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking about income tax raises. Is Labour seriously about to breach one of its major manifesto pledges, whilst also Rachel Reeves is embroiled in her own controversy for not getting the necessary licence that she needs to rent out her luxury Dulwich pad for £3,200 a month? Is Southwark Council going to respond to us by ending the show and tell us they're launching an investigation into her and holding her to account the same way they would hold anyone else? As well, Tory and Reform MPs uniting behind Nigel Farage's bill to quit the ECHR, signalling a new right of centre alliance, even though the motion lost by 96 votes to 154 after Labour switched to vote against under pro-EU pressure, with the Lib Dems claiming credit. Are we about to see a uniting of the right? And 60,000 blades are now off the streets, ninja swords surrendered ahead of August bans, and knife robberies and homicides are falling, with tougher age checks and online sales rules coming. Let's hope for less weapon carrying, fewer attacks and safer communities. Now we go to our next guest. His name is Mitchell Palmer. He's an economist at the Adam Smith Institute. He joins us down the line. First of all, hello Mitchell, how are you?
Afternoon. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mitchell. Now, I've seen here the Treasury has been floating so many stories in the media, it's hard to see what may be true, but this one seems to be gaining some traction. We see that there is now talk that Rachel Reeves is potentially going to raise income tax by 2p. But there is also what I call the sleight of hand trick, where they're also going to cut national insurance by 2p as well. Their logic is that means that someone who is payrolled will not see any tax rises, where they'll be able to somehow magically claim a working person is not having a tax rise. But if you are self-employed as a builder, a plumber, electrician, for example, this would actually have quite serious consequences for you, and I think potentially could raise £6 billion, it's estimated. I saw Sam Coates discussing there. At the same time, as well as freezing thresholds, something that Rachel Reeves said that Labour wouldn't do, just like the Conservatives said they wouldn't do before them too, that could raise another £10 billion to bail them out the black hole. I mean, do you think this would be such a serious breach of what is a very clear pledge made in the Labour manifesto the public would ever forgive her? Or do you think the sleight of hand trick with national insurance would mean that she'll get away with it?
Well, look, questions of public opinion are probably above my pay grade, to be honest. But I think what I would say is that Reeves has a serious issue on her hands. I mean, we have this 20 to 30 billion pound black hole. She made these commitments. But also, if we look at the long scheme of things, taxes in the UK haven't been higher since 1947. So if I was to diagnose Rachel Reeves's problem, it is not she doesn't have enough revenue. It is she is spending too much money.
Do you find it quite depressing that in the lead up to this budget, we're not hearing Rachel Reeves or Keir Starmer be brave enough and actually revisit serious welfare reform and cuts, where actually, if they did put that into a finance bill, the budget, for those who don't understand parliamentary procedure, a finance bill is considered a vote of confidence. If any MP of a party that is in government votes against their budget, they would automatically lose the whip. Surely this is a great opportunity for Keir Starmer to exert some pressure on his MPs and say, we simply can't keep coming back for more and more tax after already racking up taxes by £40 billion and promising even last Halloween they wouldn't be coming back for more, where it looks like another 20-30 billion is coming down the track.
Yes, look, I totally agree. I mean, the welfare reforms that Reeves proposed last year were, probably not enough, but at least they were a start. And her backbenchers wouldn't even let her do that. I mean, if we look at, for instance, the enhanced mobility component of PIP, which is a disability benefit, I mean, eligibility for that has gone up, claims for that have gone up by something like 80% in the last 5 years. I mean, if you look on the streets, are you seeing 80% more disabled people? The reality is that the welfare bill is out of control. And to be frank, we also have to look at welfare that it goes to older people as well. Let's be honest about that. And if you are going to get a handle on the fiscals, maybe some revenue side measures are necessary to broaden the base and make the system more efficient. One thing you should probably do is take the burden off those people at that £100,000 cliff, when in fact you can lose money by earning more money, which is terrible for economic growth. But on the whole, we would say, if you look at since 1947, taxes haven't been higher. So you've got to look at that spending side first.
And finally, from me, Mitchell, do you think that Labour will come back from raft this? Do you think if they did do the income tax increase, that will probably bail them out from having to keep coming back and raising taxes year on year, as we've seen? Do you think, at the very least, that might buy Rachel Reeves breathing room, that she wouldn't have to go through this whole process again? Or do you think that the reality is that this will just have further choking effect on the UK economy? We've seen payrolled employees down by around 100,000 since Labour came into power, and that will just add further strain to the welfare state, which means, and the NHS even now, despite having another 25 billion in the last budget, demanding more billions of pounds to deal with things like national insurance that haven't been fully funded. Do you think the reality is that she's going to have to come back for more and more, unless she's willing to make very brave decisions on spending cuts?
I probably do agree with that. An income tax increase wouldn't be quite as damaging as what we saw last budget, which was the employer NI, which was a truly terrible idea. But this would still put a chokehold on growth. The reality is, I mean, I know the government talked about how the UK was second in the G7 for overall GDP growth. But if we look at GDP per capita, which is living standards and the amount of income per head that the government has to tax, we were second to bottom in the OECD. So if anything, this may make that growth story worse, which may force the OBR to revisit their productivity projections again. The best that Rachel Reeves can hope for is that the OBR, like they did during the last 14 years of Tory government, continues to be over-optimistic about productivity and continues to give her some headroom for free.
Yeah, well, indeed. Let's see what happens. Thank you so much. That's Mitchell Palmer, economist at the Adam Smith Institute. Thank you for joining us. I've got another guest on the line. His name's James Nation, OBE. He is a former Treasury Special Advisor. James, you've been in the building when it comes to budget time. Rachel Reeves has got one hell of a headache on her hands, hasn't she?
She does, Jonathan, and great to be with you today. I think what I just wanted to do for your viewers is maybe take it behind the scenes a little bit. Because what's happening behind the scenes is the OBR submit a cut of their forecast, what we call rounds. They give her several versions of those in private. And tomorrow, on Halloween, she gets the final cut of that pre-measures forecast. And let me explain what I mean by pre-measures. That is where the OBR judges things like productivity, the outlook and the forecast for growth will be before they take into account any government measures that are done in the budget. So what she'll find out tomorrow is how bad the black hole is that she needs to fill. Then what you'll start to see next week is a back and forth between the Treasury and the OBR over whether particular tax measures raise what she thinks or hopes they will raise. And that's why, just to be really precise, Jonathan, because I think hopefully want to nail this point, I don't think they've decided what they want to do yet. Okay. I don't think the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have made a final decision. They're going to make that final decision, I think, in days, when they start to get a flavour of, hang on, can we just cobble together something if we look at pensions, property, all the rumours your viewers will be familiar with, or do we need to break glass and go for something like a manifesto breach on the income tax side?
Interesting. And when it comes, I mean, what a day, Halloween of all days, for this to be landing on the desk of the Chancellor and indeed the Prime Minister too. I mean, out of interest, you say there behind the scenes that's going on. So a lot of kite flying is going on. Do you then normally expect to see anything that starts to drip feed out really beyond the end of next week? Do we think that's what we call then in politics terms rolling the pitch, where they start to basically outline with the public the things they're going to do in order to try and soften the blow, as you say, particularly if they are willing to break the emergency glass and breach a very clear manifesto pledge?
Well, it's always hard to say, Jonathan, and let me just illustrate what I mean. So in the summer, where you saw loads of tax speculation stories, I don't think that was the Treasury. I mean, you'll be familiar with this trick. It would have been think tanks putting their proposals out. The Treasury can't deny anything, and then hey ho, a journalist has a story that a tax change is definitely going to happen. But now we are in a different phase. The Treasury is starting to condition things in the media. Remember that there are a lot more chefs involved in the process this time, because you've got the budget board as well and advisors around the Prime Minister who will have particular views on what to do. Someone like Torsten Bell as well will no doubt be inputting to this budget. So I do think it will be interesting what you start to see in the coming days and weeks. And my own view is you've just got to watch it slightly, because if markets think an income tax rise is baked in, Jonathan, and that's not what you're going to do, you're going to want to try and avoid a surprise on budget day. Equally, if you are going to do it, you better make sure that Labour MPs, I would argue, are ready and have the best arguments for the day, whether that's they'll have got what they want on the two-child benefit cap being lifted, or whether it's, to your point earlier, Jonathan, they do something like this switch and cut national insurance, so an MP can say on the doorstep, you know, oh, you're a working age person, you're not going to be worse off, you're actually going to be better off through this change. They're going to have to get their arguments marshalled before the budget because of where expectations are, I think. So we do need to pay particular attention to the briefing now, because I think Treasury behind the scenes, that briefing machine, will start to motor.
Rachel Reeves has started the process of saying that Brexit is to blame, that the Conservatives' mismanagement is still to blame, particularly Liz Truss, that they point to as well, the black hole they inherited, and obviously the global situation, the continuing war in Ukraine, Trump's tariffs that have obviously had an impact too. No one's denying that all those have had some element of different factors. However, do you think the problem is that Labour was so doom and gloom? They talked down the economy so much. In fact, they briefed ahead of the election they were going to create the black hole that they then did go on to create, make decisions like axing winter fuel payments, which are politically so toxic and so unpopular that they're going to get any leniency from the British public? Or do you think there's such distrust in Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves that it's going to take one hell of a rabbit out of the hat to convince the public this isn't of their own making?
Yeah, well, I think I'm not sure talking about a productivity downgrade is going to set the pubs of the nation alight and try and, you know, get into the detail there. That's for sure. Look, the way I see this, Jonathan, is basically we've had a persistent productivity problem since post the financial crisis. Some of the factors you mentioned definitely haven't helped. That's for sure. But the one point I'd like to make here is, you're not just in receive mode when you're the Treasury with the OBR. You're not just there passively waiting for, you know, the forecast to come your way. You're also, you know, trying to condition what the OBR decides through government policy. And that's why I think it is totally fair enough to critique a policy like the increase to employer national insurance, because that did then pass through to inflation, and we have seen some negative consequences in the job market as well, which hasn't been great. So my point is, you've always got this worry, if you're Chancellor, that the OBR might decide, hang on, we're being too rosy on productivity. But it's your job, through the policies that you want to try and enact as a government, to try and change their minds, to try and limit the damage. So we're going to hear a lot of focus from Labour politically, I think, about what's happened in the past. But keep in mind also, Jonathan, this is about, well, the OBR also thinking, looking at the government's policy toolkit now, do we necessarily have confidence that things are going to improve?
James Nation there, former special advisor in the Treasury. Thank you so much for joining us and taking us behind the scenes there. Really fascinating indeed. We have a caller waiting to come on the line who wants to talk a bit about, I think, Matt in Cheshire. If this was Boris or a Tory minister, people would be going nuts regarding Rachel Reeves. Matt, you tell me what you think.
I actually have that written down, more or less. You, Scott Bentham, you know, Lee Anderson, anyone like that, they would be going for the throat immediately. You mentioned earlier on, Labour, will Labour ever get any clear blue water?
Yes.
And I thought all that water is reformed turquoise. So they will never, ever get any clear blue water. And if the licence doesn't get her, the aftermath of the budget will. So she's just clinging on for time, like days.
Do you think Keir Starmer, Matt, is going to use Rachel Reeves as the fall girl, that when it comes to it next May, he will chuck her under the bus to try and save his own skin?
I think she'll probably be going like a month after the budget when the anger ramps up again, and people just think, oh God, you know, he's definitely using her as a patsy. I'm not sure of the timeline. Even more scary for me is the lack of, well, the non-existent talent on the bench. I've got 3 options: Pat McFadden, Darren Jones, and I think it's James Murray.
They don't excite you? They don't excite you, Matt? You're not looking at them going, yes, the future.
Like a Mogadom, you know, not a chance. If that's the alternative, they might as well call an election now.
Just get over and done with. Just get over and done with, right? And Matt, out of interest, you've with Rachel Reeves, do you think she has to resign? In your, like, if she was honourable, should she do the right thing and resign in your view right now?
After the way they treated you with Partygate and everything that came with it, there was a purposeful intent to use any single discretion to oust ministers. If you did the same, then she should go right now.
I agree with you, Matt, by the way. I think that if this was anyone else, particularly on the centre-right of British politics, whether in Conservatives or Reform, I think that there would be merry hell to pay. We'd probably already have a Standards Commissioner investigation underway as we speak. Matt in Cheshire there, thank you so much for that call. Really enjoying it. And blimey, Rachel Reeves has set you lot alight on the text. I think Finn there behind the glass is... I don't know if you can find any more text messages, and their essays in some cases, the people are that angry there. Elaine from Portsmouth: I do not agree with the rent reforms. I own my home and rented it out as I moved in with my partner. Sadly, he passed away, so I told my tenant I needed my house back to live in myself. I was told by a lawyer and the council I had no rights to evict her. It did not matter that I could become homeless. Lucky she was good enough to move out, but I'll never be a landlord again. The experiences here is shocking. These two-tier Labour cabinet morons seem to think that they're a law unto themselves and the laws and rules don't apply to them, but only to their serfs and plebs who get penalised, fined and castigated for doing what parasites do. That's from Fred there. He is not holding back on that one, blimey. Another one here, Paul in Fife: once upon a time, disabled people drove Reliant Robins or similar three-wheel cars, not Mercs or Jags. Total madness in relation to Lee Anderson's off-the-cuff remark when it came to returning to the 1960s vehicles. And Chris here has said, Reeves should be sacked. She's in charge of our finance of this country, and she did not know something this simple. No wonder we're crashing into a recession. Well, you know what to do. 0344 499 1000 if you want to text, WhatsApp, voice note or call us. You can also message on X at talkTV, and you can text 87222 with the word talk at the start of your message. We will see you after the break.
friend was murdered last year up on the High Street. Girl I know was murdered in Southall Park. The government are failing us. I'm so scared for my children. I have a 22-year-old son, and I'm begging him to move out of the country. What are these politicians doing to us? They're putting our children in so much danger. They're putting everyone in danger. British people never vote against their government.
Yeah.
They're going to push us through it because they're not listening to us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk with me, Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for Ian Collins as we're coming to the final countdown shortly. But we've got a voice note from George in Blackpool.
Good afternoon, Jonathan. Regarding Rachel Reeves, the Bank of England finance guru, how can we trust her to run the country's finances when she can't even manage her own? And for Keir Starmer to have confidence in someone like that, he needs his head looking at.
I absolutely love this stuff, George. I've got nothing to say because I totally agree with you. And it's just utter madness that, as you say, someone who can't be on top of something so basic in an area that for so long has had this particular licensing scheme in place, and somehow she's magically overlooked it, just seems utterly bizarre to me. I bet she's been out on doors in Southwark with Labour councillors campaigning for this very scheme. She's certainly been doing it in her own constituency. She tweeted about it on the 20th of October this year from her own X account that promotes her constituency and her work. Blimey, the hypocrisy is rank. But let's get to the cause. Alan in Cheshire, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, doing fine, thank you.
What do you think about Rachel Reeves?
Well, bloody useless. But I'm a landlord, and before I can advertise a property, I have to get an energy performance certificate, and it has to be within the required rating before it's suitable for letting. When I've done that and I get the tenant, I have to have a gas safety certificate for the heating and any gas appliances. I have to have an electrical survey and an electrical certificate to show that the wiring is correct. And I have to get PAT tests, which is the Hoover, the toaster, the iron, any movable appliances, all require testing. The cables need putting on to show that they've been tested, and another certificate. So has she done all those? Or were they inadvertently overlooked as well? Because it cost me a fortune. I mean, if I can see why I have to pay if she doesn't.
Well, Alan, I would say that word inadvertently is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Thank you so much there for your call and for sharing your experience as a landlord. Again, it's great to have people with actual lived experience explain the challenges they have to overcome. But is it one rule for them and people like Alan, and is it another rule for Rachel Reeves? It feels like it is. But Southwark Council, we're waiting for you. Finn's waiting by the phone. Tell us, are you going to investigate Rachel Reeves, rogue landlord Rachel Reeves, but on the fact that she didn't get her licence? Well, Nigel in London has got to own some property too, and he wants to say what he thinks about this licensing scheme as well. Hello, Nigel.
Good afternoon. We have properties, and our properties are all in Westminster, which is in central London. And the point I'd like to make first of all is twofold. First of all, this licensing and registration thing is nothing short of a cash grab by local councils. Because what more am I going to get for it? The answer is nothing. That's the first point. The second point, which I don't understand about this story, is really quite basic and simple. As a landlord, if you own a property, then the land registry is where your details are held. The council know that. You pay rates, or if not, your tenant pays rates, or council tax, whatever it may be, but you pay service charges if you do or if you don't. But the other thing is they know who owns the property. So she would have been written to and or emailed. It's irrelevant about her letting company because the letting company don't own the property. The letting company, I would imagine, offer a full managed lease for her rental, which in other words, they look after the income, any maintenance. But she's responsible for the day-to-day running of the property. She owns the property. So why was she not aware? And if she wasn't aware, I'd like a spokesman for Southwark Council to say, we never wrote to her, or we did.
Well, I think this is what's amazing, isn't it, Nigel, that Sir Laurie Magnus looked within 24 hours, has basically had a conversation, it seems, with Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer and decided that it was a mistake, but she's accepted it. But how has he been able to come to that without having spoken to the letting agents and asking them, what's your processes and procedures? What communication did you supply to Rachel Reeves? And then, as you say, contacting Southwark Council, what's your processes and procedures when it comes to retaining information with landlords regarding this licensing scheme? It just seems that this is all very quick to be sort of brushed under the carpet, maybe because she's the Chancellor, but how is that fair when I recognise if this was you, you would have the letter with a fine attached to it through your letterbox, whereas in Rachel Reeves, looks like at the moment she could be getting away with just a simple slap on the wrist.
Well, yeah, I'd be keen to know that if anyone in Downing Street has actually bothered to make contact with Southwark Council, because, you know, just without wishing to sound repetitious, she must have had a communication from Southwark Council or her husband, who, if they actually own the property, to say there's a registration scheme, you have to apply. And it's quite a difficult process, let me tell you. It's quite a lengthy process to gain absolutely nothing apart from the gesture of you handing over funds to the local authority. You get nothing more, not even a thank you.
Well, Nigel, thank you so much again for sharing your experience and asking very legitimate questions. We will keep pushing Southwark Council to try and get us an answer, we hope, before the end of today's show. But of course, we will make sure that whoever sits in the hot seat next, and I don't want to give the game away just yet because you should be knowing anyhow, we'll make sure they continue to put that pressure on too. We're going to have a quick break where we've got some more texts and calls before we have our last guest of the day. His name will be Gareth Davis. He is the Member of Parliament for Grantham. He is also a Conservative, and we'll be keen to get his views on today's stories too. We'll see you shortly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, and during the ad break, Southwark Council has given us a response to my calls, your calls, to investigate Rachel Reeves, a landlord, a rogue landlord it seems, in their area because she did not have a licence, which means she's entitled up to a £30,000 fine, and her tenants are required to potentially get up to 12 months rebate on the rent that they've been paying at her £3,200 luxury home in Dulwich. Let's read out what we've had from Southwark Council. Southwark Council requires private landlords to acquire a selective licence in order to rent out their homes if they live in specific areas. This is in order to protect tenants and ensure landlords are complying with housing requirements, providing safe, well-maintained homes. Selective licences are required by sending applications to the council, which we then assess and approve subject to conditions. When we become aware of an unlicensed property, we issue a warning letter advising the landlord that they have 21 days to apply for a licence. Enforcement actions such as fines are reserved for those who do not apply within the time or where a property is found to have been in unsafe condition. We cannot comment on individual cases. You weak Southwark Council. You're weak. Councillor Sarah King, the leader of Southwark Council. Get a backbone. Get a backbone. Find your spine. Put it in place. Just because you're trying to protect your Labour Chancellor from any action, you're actually telling me that because you've said... did you send a warning letter? Or have you sent the warning letter today? Have you been given given Rachel Reeves the get out of jail free card here because you've sent her the letter after she admitted she hadn't done it? Was it the Daily Mail that finally forced you into this position? It's just so weak that you're suddenly using this as an excuse. Oh, we'll send out a warning letter and it's only if the warning letter's ignored then we fine you. I can't believe that. On the 18th of October 2024, you did over the landlord and the letting agency for not having the required licence, and rightly so, I'm sure, and levied heavy fines upon them. And you're telling me now that you're not going to find the backbone to hold Rachel Reeves to account. It's a complete and utter dereliction of duty. Councillor Sarah King, come on this show. If you can't come on in the next 30 minutes, make sure you come on to a later show and justify to the people of Southwark why is it that Rachel Reeves should be given a free pass when others would not be afforded the same luxury. This is two-tier justice under two-tier care in two-tier Labour-run Southwark Council, clearly. And the Liberal Democrats, our leading opposition there, are calling for a proper investigation. I've been calling for a proper investigation. Kane Badenoch is calling for an inquiry and for Rachel Reeves to do the honourable thing and resign, because in her own words, she was willing to hold Rishi Sunak to a higher standard than she's willing to hold herself. It is just the same old Labour, as far as I'm concerned. Well, there you go. I've got that off my chest. Let's have a voice note. Pete, who wants to talk about Rachel Reeves.
I really hope Rachel Reeves has been paying the tax on the earnings she's been making out of renting that house out. If it was anybody else doing this, they'd get prosecuted. So really, right, as they're supposed to be setting an example, she needs to be prosecuted. We couldn't get away with, oh, I didn't know, oh, I forgot, it slipped my mind. Absolute hogwash.
Absolutely right. If this was anyone else, they'd have the rule book thrown at them. Let's go to Vernon in Staffordshire, who wants to talk about the Landlord Rights Bill, or the Renters' Rights Bill, as it's also been called. Hello, Vernon, how are you?
Jonathan, good afternoon to you, ex-Tory. We have spoken before.
No, thank you, sir. I do remember your very, very good voice. How are you doing, sir? And what do you think about what Rachel Reeves and this Labour government's doing to the rental properties?
Well, more of the same, really, because there was the employment bill, which is yet to come out to effect, which is a disaster. Now you've got the landlord bill or the renters bill. That's going to be a disaster. It's really simple. It's the politics of envy. Quite simply, lots of landlords are doing it for various reasons. Normally, as entrepreneurs, they wish to maybe retire early so that they've got some income coming in. And now all that's going to happen is landlords are going to sell their properties, the market will shrink, the availability will be less, and when things become available in fewer quantities or smaller quantities, prices will increase. So well done, Sakia and Rachel from Accounts. All you are doing is exactly what you're doing to the economy. You are destroying what's left. The only problem with socialism, Jonathan, is with regard to socialism, it's a problem when you run out of other people's money.
Vernon,
that's what's happening with Labour. They're running out of our money.
Vernon, that is a great call. Thank you so much for that call. There's nothing else to say. Again, another round of applause. The listeners to Talk are just absolutely bang on the money, call after call after call. People with real-life lived experience who are able to actually explain to politicians in Westminster who clearly don't have a clue the consequences of their decisions and how it will negatively impact people in the market. Amanda in London, Rachel Reeves, knowing full well what the rules were, obviously feels she's above the law in true Soviet style. The text messages for Rachel Reeves are not looking good here. If the House of Reeves either demolish it or give it to a young family. There you go. People saying it's getting to that extreme. I would not support taking someone else's property off them just rudimentarily, but I tell you what, I understand why people are angry. I have a flat, and due to these new landlord rules, I'm too scared to rent it out, so I'm letting my daughter live there for free, and she takes care of the council tax and all the bills and keeps the property in good order. I make zero money from it, but I'm stress-free. That's Jess in Lincolnshire regarding the Renters' Rights Bill. Matthew here is texting, why when cabinet ministers do something like forget to apply for the correct licence, it's a innocent mistake, but when us mere mortals like us do it, it's an offence. Darryl from Lincoln, if Starmer has given Reeves his support, then she'll be gone by the weekend. He did the same for Rayner and Mandelson. Labour are corrupt to the core and Starmer is a fraud. Well, let's find out after the break what Conservative MP, I wonder what he might think, Gareth Davis is going to have to say. We'll see you soon.
My friend was murdered last year up on the high street. Girl I know was murdered in Southall Park. The government are failing us. I'm so scared for my children. I have a 22-year-old son and I'm begging him to move out of the country. What are these politicians doing to us? They're putting our children in so much danger. They're putting everyone in danger. British people never vote against their government.
Yeah.
They're going to push us through it because they're not listening to us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Jonathan Gullis, in for the great Ian Collins as we go to the final segment of our show today. Thank you for all the calls, all the texts, all the voice notes. It has been quite revealing just how angry people are with Rachel Reeves' blatant hypocrisy. We go to my next guest, joining me down the line again, Gareth Davis, MP, Conservative for Grantham and Bourne, the great home of the Iron Lady herself, Margaret Thatcher, and where obviously you've just been celebrating her 100th birthday, Gareth. How are you?
That is true. We had Thatcher Fest in Grantham. It was a fantastic week. Actually, the whole town came together. You know, whatever your politics and past and ideology and ideological beliefs, it's an amazing thing for Grantham, an amazing story of somebody who went from, you know, Grantham grocer's shop to the great halls of British power. And I think that's something to inspire lots of people, regardless of whether you agree with her or not. I happen to agree quite a lot with her, as you'd imagine.
No, I can indeed imagine. Now, one thing that I imagine, Gareth, is you might be agreeing a lot with our listeners. The texts are coming in. Rachel Reeves really has serious questions to answer here. To claim that she inadvertently didn't realise she needed a licence to rent out her property, despite having lived for a long time in the Southwark Council area, which has for a long time had this licensing scheme in place, which means she could face up to £30,000 fine as a maximum and have to repay 12 months of rent back to her tenants. I mean, shouldn't she do the honourable thing and resign?
Well, look, I mean, as you say, she's been found out to be breaking the law. This is something that, by the way, a law and licensing requirement is something she knew about. I think only a couple of weeks ago, she was tweeting about how great it was that licensing is required in Leeds, as you were alluding to. And before the election, you'll remember that she and Keir Starmer and actually most of the Labour front bench were so vitriolic and so accusatory about the most minor of misdemeanours from other members of Parliament. And then as soon as they get in, of course, they just brush these things away. At the very best, this is disgraceful hypocrisy. But I think it's a combination of things with Rachel Reeves. This is the latest thing to emerge. You'll remember her anti-corruption minister in the Treasury was under investigation, I think she still is, for corruption and had to go. And then the damage she's doing to the economy, which your viewers and listeners will be well aware of. The combination of those things, I think her time may be coming to an end. But look, this comes down to Keir Starmer. He's the boss, and we'll find out whether he's got a backbone and whether he finds the irony of everything he said before the election and does nothing after the election when it's his own people being found out. We'll see how tough he is after all.
Well, Gareth, I've been putting pressure today on Southwark Council. In fact, Finn, my producer, did an amazing job of getting a statement from them, because we were saying if this was anyone else, you would open up at the very least an investigation. They've come back claiming that, oh, they normally issue a letter that if you don't respond to within 21 days, then they would look to fine you. Now, we know she's had 16 months of not having a licence on this property that's been taking in £3,200 a month. Shouldn't Labour-led Southwark Council, like it has some with other landlords who haven't applied the licence, and as recently as October 2024 issued thousands of pounds of fines upon the landlord and the letting agent for a failure to apply for this licence, shouldn't they apply the same rules they would to any other residents as they will to Rachel Reeves? Or is this going to be Labour-led council just simply trying to cover Rachel Reeves' back?
Yes, they should. In fact, in 2022, Rachel Reeves, there's always a tweet, by the way, there's always a tweet with these guys. 2022, she said, you know, why can't they just follow the rules? Why can't people just follow the rules like everybody else? And the rules should apply to everybody equally. I completely agree with Rachel Reeves. You know, going into public life, you're going to be scrutinised, quite rightly. You know that you are held to a higher standard, quite rightly. And so when you get into a situation like this, you have to face the consequences. And we see time and time again, Labour are pushed and pushed and pushed until absolute breaking point, and there's no choice but to move these ministers on. You remember Angela Rayner was caught, dodging her taxes. We had as I said, the anti-corruption minister investigated for corruption. We had the transport secretary, found guilty of previous fraud. The list goes on. And so, surely the Chancellor of the Exchequer, no matter how powerful and important that role is, she should be held to account the same way as everybody else. And so the council need to, investigate that. We're calling for a full investigation into this, not least because she's saying she had no idea, and yet she's tweeting about how great licensing is. Doesn't add up.
Absolutely. And you talk about the economy, Gareth. You've obviously worked within financial services. You understand it better than most. Rachel Reeves, we know they're floating this idea potentially of a 2p increase in income tax. But their sleight of hand trick is to say they'll also cut national insurance by 2p, which will somehow mean working people. Their definition seems to get narrower and narrower. What a working person is will not see a tax increase unless you're self-employed, Gareth, unless you're a builder, a plumber, a sparky, people who actually need to build the 1.5 million homes that now Labour admits they probably won't be able to actually build. And Steve Reid, let's not forget, said if he doesn't build them, then people should fire him. Well, we'll certainly hold him to account on those words there. How damaging would it be to increase income tax? And because it's such a serious breach of a very clear commitment made by the Labour Party in their manifesto, would this just be the final nail in the coffin, do you think, with the public and this Labour government?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Labour are cooked. Even with the manifesto break of the national insurance rise at the last budget that nobody was expecting, 25 billion hike in taxes, that you talk to any business, they will tell you how impactful that has been on their bottom line. You talk to other businesses, they'll tell you how they've pushed that additional cost onto prices. And, it's no surprise to us. We've been saying this since last year's budget, that inflation would go up as a result, and sure enough, it's doubled, right? So wherever you look around the economy, the impact of tax rises is profound. And the thought of having additional tax rises, and by the way, income tax isn't just on work, it's on pensioners. It's on all sorts of different types of income. And as you say, in particular, it's the guys who get up in the morning, get their kit in the back of a van, and go to work. It's the workmen and the self-employed who are going to be hit by this, just like they were with ULEZ and all these other taxes. People don't seem to think about them. And so, I really take issue with what Rachel Reeves is sort of trying to do at the moment, which is kite flying. It seems every day there's a new tax that she might be increasing. But I would just step back and say, look, why are we even in this position? Why should she even be thinking about raising taxes? Well, the answer is that at the last budget, she launched a massive wave of spending to the tune of £70 billion extra, fueled, by the way, by borrowing, which she said she wouldn't do, in addition to the tax rises. So she had 40 billion of tax rises. She borrowed the rest, and that's 70 billion extra. And it's gone on things that are just not having an impact on the economy, not growing the economy. They're not making people better. And a lot of the times they're vindictive policies like the VAT tax on schools or the family farm tax. She should not be in a position now where she's thinking or needing to raise taxes. We have a quite a clear message on this to the British public. This is a choice by Rachel Reeves. She could be cutting spending on welfare, which is going up to £400 billion by the end of this Parliament. But because they're so weak and because they're so disjointed and disunited when it comes to reducing welfare in the Labour Party, she can't do it. She's going to try again. Maybe she'll get a couple of billion here, but it's not enough. She has a choice to avoid increasing taxes, and we won't forget that, and I don't think the British public will either.
Well, Gareth, another thing that we see is obviously on the forefront of everyone's mind is the illegal migration, in particular, obviously, small boats crossings. We had the extraordinary scenes, obviously, last Friday night where the government had to admit that they'd accidentally released the most high-profile sexual predator and paedophile, a man who caused a wave of protests outside migrant hotels in the summer of this year. He's now said in an interview with Sky News that he tried to hand himself into the police and they simply didn't want to arrest him. We've also found out the government actually didn't deport him. They paid to deport him, to withdraw any potential legal claims he might put up. And I've been told by my producer Finn that the £500 he's got is an average of 14 months' salary for an Ethiopian in their current economic climate. I mean, The one in, one out scheme has seen 42 people out, 23 people in, and thousands more still cross via small boats, with one person even coming back having already been deported. And David Lammy had the audacity to say that proves the system's working. And yet, guess what? He's still in this country. He hasn't been sent back to France. I mean, do Labour have any credibility? Can they even have the gall to try and attack the Conservatives who, yes, have accepted that they made major mistakes when it came to both legal and illegal migration? But Labour came in claiming it was all going to be easy, wasn't it? Just get a deal done with France and there you go.
Absolutely. It's all going to be better. Just let us into power and we'll sort it out. And clearly, as you've been describing so well, it's got worse, right? It's got worse. First thing they did was to scrap the deterrent that we had in developed over a significant period of time and was ready to go, and they dropped it. They've launched a new agreement with France, this sort of so-called one in, one out. But as you say, we've had 16,000 people come across from France, and whoop-de-doo, we've returned 41. I think the British public are not stupid, right? We're not going to be gaslit by David Lammy or anybody else to think that this is not a disaster. It's total chaos, and they've overseen, a situation which is really difficult, right? I've always said this is an incredibly challenging, situation where you have these guys that are just constantly desperate to get into our country, and a country in France that historically has not been that helpful in trying to stop this phenomenon. But to actively block policies that were in place and to abandon them, and then to make it worse, is just beggars belief. At the same time, we have a situation domestically where we have, a challenging situation when it comes to prison population. We've got 10,000 foreign national offenders who are in our prisons, and if we want to free up some space, I would suggest we start by deporting every single one of them. But the reason that Kavatu and actually 262 other people have been released by mistake in the last year is because of the constant changing policy of this Labour government when it comes to early release. They are releasing, very dangerous people onto our streets way before they should. And the prison officers are getting confused because the policy keeps changing, and it's a very difficult processing application when you actually don't know exactly what the government's policy is of the day. I would just end with this on this point. Kavatu is a dangerous paedophile who shouldn't have been in this country. He's now thankfully back where he originated from. But the irony of Labour's policy on early release is that people like him may not even go to prison in the future. Yeah. And that is a damning indictment, I think, of this soft-touch Labour government.
Gareth Davies, I appreciate you're very busy. I'm going to need to let you go to get on with your other parliamentary duties. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's Gareth Davies, Conservative MP for Grantham and Bourne there, putting the case forward. We've got a call here from David in Inverness regarding Reeves and the 2p tax rise incoming potentially. Hello, David.
Hello, good afternoon, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Obviously, I've just run through on the back of the conversation you was having with Gareth as regards the increase in tax and potentially Rachel Reeves reducing the national insurance levels. The only thing I've got a concern with is obviously every pensioner doesn't pay national insurance, and if you've retired from a public sector role, once you've taken your pension, you don't pay national insurance. So there'd be a massive increase in the tax take from, by not taking national insurance, so they're taking the tax instead. So there'd be a higher tax take.
Exactly, and even those on the state pension are projected at current rates to end up having to pay income tax, even if they solely rely on the state pension themselves. I mean, this is just another punch in the nose for pensioners from Keir Starmer,
no, exactly, because they've not increased the, through fiscal drag, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
And Rachel Reeves looks like she's going to continue freezing thresholds again because it will raise her another 10 billion. It just seems to be a complete abomination. David, thank you so much for joining us there with your call from Inverness. We've had some other great texts coming in here. Hi, Jonathan. I think Rachel from Accounts should resign, not because she's completely useless, incompetent idiot, but if Starmer lets her do the budget, she will be fired anyway. I'd run now if I was her. That's from Michael in Suffolk. I tell you what, the text about Rachel Reeves. Another one here. Rachel Reeves, I don't care which party she belongs to, she broke the law. And finally, if the Chancellor's short of money, common sense solution is stop spending on non-essentials. List of such is obvious to most Brits. That's from Anne in Archway. Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the great, well, talk supremo now with all these viral clips he keeps getting, Peter Cardwell. Whether it's Labour, whether it's Reform, they're all being held to fire here on the home of common sense. Peter, what have you got coming up?
Has to be done. Jonathan, listen, thank you for that lovely welcome. How are you keeping? You well?
I'm good, yeah. I'm amazed with the... I could have done a whole show just on Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, and we're going to do a lot of it on her as well. Should she resign? What is the detail of this? Is she going to have to give the £38,000 back to the tenants as well? They apparently could have some redress in that. We'll look into all of that. Also, the Tories demanding her resignation and so on. It is really interesting. We were told time and time again, oh, those awful Tories, they did so many terrible things. We're going to be different. Well, are they that different, really? And also, let's be a little bit cynical about this. Is this that big a deal? Does it really matter? Maybe this is just something that some people do. But we've got a statement, of course, from, also interestingly, from the government. You know, did Keir Starmer see the material, or was it just a verbal assurance?
Very quick, isn't it, how they've come to the conclusion.
Quick. And also, did those letters come out last night? Again, let's put our cynical hat on. Did those letters come out last night? Because last time, remember, she cried and the pound tanked. So was that before the markets were open? So we're going to get into all of that and what Jack Elsom thinks, the political editor of The Sun, what Isabel Oakeshaw thinks, our international editor. We'll talk as well about Trump lowering the tariffs on China. We'll talk about Gazan students allowed to bring their families to Britain. Is that the right policy, especially when some of them could support Hamas terrorists? We'll talk to Kinsey Schofield. We've got all the great guests today about Prince Andrew possibly facing a private prosecution as well. Also, horrible story sent to me by a listener, actually, about a Jewish Orthodox man locked in a London bus by a driver who said, I don't like Jews.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a horrendous story. We'll talk about that. We'll see what's in the Sun as well. We'll talk about the sport. I know that Sean Custis will be very, very happy that Newcastle won their Carabao Cup match last night. I know nothing about football. We're going to pretend to again at 6:45. So there's plenty to talk about.
Fulham scraped by with Wycombe Wanderers. I'm a Fulham fan, and I was disappointed to see them
scraping
by.
Newcastle. So
and they will be